Chapter 1258. Damn it. Sensing the approaching void beast, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei's expressions changed again and again. That was because they could feel the overwhelming aura from the void beast from afar, so much so that the timeless arc speed was affected. It was as if it was dragging Mount Buzhou. Moreover, even with the timeless arc between them, Yang Mei and the others could still feel a suffocating aura. This aura was too terrifying. In terms of aura, even Yang Mei's true form seemed to be slightly inferior to it. Hurry, 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 and even faster. Fang Qingshan and the others had just arrived in the boundless void. Most of their knowledge came from the Poison Marquis and the others, so they did not want to complicate matters. Unfortunately, the timeless arc was fast, but the void beast was faster. The distance between the two was shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just an instant, a black light flashed before Fang Qingshan's eyes. The void beast intercepted the timeless arc 10,000 meters in front of them. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Seeing that there was no chance of escape, Fang Qingshan did not struggle pointlessly. He had chosen to escape earlier because he had sensed danger on a whim. Moreover, he had just entered the boundless void, so he needed to be cautious. Moreover, because the previous explosion of the wormhole had caused too much of a commotion, it had already become a place of trouble. However, this did not mean that he did not have the power to resist, or that he was afraid of the void beast. Although the beast was ferocious and made people wary, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei were not easily frightened. The void beast before them was something like an octopus. Its entire body was as black as ink, flowing with a smooth light. Its black tentacles were thicker, longer, and stronger than Yang Mei's 3,000 willow branches. Although Yang Mei was also a chaos spirit roots manifestation and a chaos archfiend, he was also talented. Other than his intelligence and cultivation, he was not much different from a chaos beast. However, just like how the beasts in Desolation were inferior to the chaos beasts were also inferior to the void beasts in terms of quality. Just by looking at the size of the void beast before him, it was clear that it was not to be trifled with. But to say that Fang Qingshan and Zhang Han were afraid, that wasn't necessarily the case. After all, this world was ruled by intelligent beings. As long as the gap wasn't too large, no matter how talented the void beasts were, they wouldn't be a match for intelligent life forms. However, the void beasts were not only extremely strong and fast, they also had astonishing defense and high vitality. In other words, the void beasts were extremely difficult to kill. They couldn't be killed quickly, nor could they get rid of them. This was the main reason why the void beasts were a disaster in the void. Moreover, there was another point. If the commotion was too big, it would easily attract other fierce beasts. This octopus-like beast was attracted because the commotion caused by the wormhole explosion was too big. This place had already become a troublesome place. If Fang Qingshan couldn't get rid of this beast quickly, it would be hard to predict what would happen next. If he was lucky, it would be fine. If he was unlucky and attracted a few more void beasts or void thieves, then he would really be done for. Therefore, Fang Qingshan didn't think about how to get rid of the void beast from the beginning. Instead, he wanted to escape if he could. After all, there weren't too many benefits. Getting rid of the beast wasn't something that could be done quickly. There might even be some losses. Moreover, if he was tied down, it could easily trigger unknown dangers. There were disadvantages and no advantages. Anyone could make a wise choice in such a situation. However, things didn't go according to one's wishes. If he couldn't escape, then he could only cut through the Gordian knot. However, even if he wanted to get rid of the other party as soon as possible, the other party didn't think of letting him go. Therefore, as soon as it discovered Fang Qingshan, the octopus-like beast immediately turned around. Its huge eyes were pitch black, but in the center of its pupils, there was an extreme scarlet color. It emitted a terrifying light, filled with monstrous greed, and was extremely cold. Being stared at, Fang Qingshan only felt goosebumps all over his body. A chill spread from his toes to the top of his head, and his entire body quivered. Boom! A sonic boom rang out. The beast had already launched its attack. Several arms lashed down from the sky like poisonous dragon whips. It felt as though the entire space was about to explode. Good heavens, before it even landed, it had already caused the entire timeless arc to shake. Death side slash. Fang Qingshan coldly snorted. The origin energy in the eternal lightning pool surged into the death scythe like a river bursting through a dam. Whoosh! The death scythe suddenly trembled, and an incomparably tyrannical power, like the raging of the sea, like the eruption of a volcano, instantly shot out. In a flash, it grew with the wind, and was no smaller than the tentacles of the void beasts. The menacing sawtooth and the pitch-black appearance of the giant beast. The roaring and wailing souls on it were all chilling. As the blade fell, it was like the grim reaper harvesting souls. The death scythe was no longer what it used to be after the advancement of the timeless Arkansas. In terms of attack power, it was no longer inferior to ordinary inferior primordial cardinal treasures. In particular, after witnessing the eye of Death's eruption not long ago, the death scythe had improved even further. Clang! Even so, when the death scythe collided with the void beast's tentacles, sparks erupted like a volcanic eruption, and the sound of metal clashing rang out incessantly. Actually, Fang Qingshan wasn't very surprised by this. After all, for those with strong bodies, their bodies were their best weapons. Just like Wu people, even though they didn't have primordial cardinal treasures, they were never at a disadvantage when fighting others. In fact, because they were more skilled, they might even have the upper hand. While the death scythe was no longer what it used to be, the void beast was no pushover either. Therefore, after the death scythe, almost at the same time, Fang Qingshan summoned the bridge of the other shore and the passing water lamp. The first spurt of energy, the second decline, and the third exhaustion. Since he was ready to attack, Fang Qingshan naturally had to kill it as quickly as possible so that he could leave this place as soon as possible. All living beings suffer. Only I am at the other shore. Freeze. Time is like water. A white steed flies past a crevice. Freeze. However, two heavenly sounds of the great path that seemed to come from the void echoed in the surroundings. Then, a stream of light flew by, and an ancient bridge that seemed to have weathered the passage of time soared through the sky. It suppressed the void. The will of the other shore swarmed over like a tidal wave, exuding from the ancient bridge. Then, a bright lamp rose and was completely surrounded by the power of time. It emitted a mystical glow, and one could clearly hear the sound of flowing water. Then, the bright lamp emitted an ancient divine splendor. The power contained within was completely at its peak, and countless runes were flashing. The power of time was flowing. Whoosh! In the next moment, the light was enshrouded. An array of white divine light shot out majestically toward the void beast. Chapter 12:59. Time freeze. Space freeze. While the bridge of the opposite shore and the passing water lantern could not compare to the death scythe. However, following the advancement of the timeless arc, they had also reached the level of a top connate numinous treasure, comparable to the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man, as well as the river diagram of the ancient. Moreover, time was supreme and space was king. Due to the nomological laws they each contained, they were superior to ordinary numinous treasures of nomological laws. They were even more mysterious. The bridge of the opposite shore pressed down on the behemoth's body like an ancient divine mountain. The light of the passing water lantern was like water and air, desperately seeping into the behemoth's body. In an instant, the void behemoth was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Of course, this was the ideal situation. How could the void behemoth not be able to resist? However, the bridge of the opposite shore that was pressing down on the void behemoth's body trembled incessantly, as if it would collapse at any moment. The watery light that shrouded the void behemoth's body could only stay on the surface, unable to seep in. Even so, the 2 top-grade connate numinous treasures that also contained the nomological laws of space still had a certain effect on the behemoth's body. The tentacles that were even stronger than Yang Mei and Yang Lu's were no longer as ferocious as before. Moreover, Fang Qingshan did not intend to use the bridge of the opposite shore and the passing water lantern to deal with the void behemoth. After all, that was not realistic. The power of the Death Scythe was above those two numinous treasures, but was only on par with the behemoth's tentacles. Fortunately, he only wanted to use those two treasures to restrain the behemoth, so that he could use the other treasures to prevent them from moving too quickly and being difficult to lock down. Kaboom! Sure enough, a flag flew out in the next instant. It fluttered loudly in the wind. The flag unfurled, and boundless lightning manifested on one side, ranging from the Palm Thunder to the Purple Heaven Thunder. It was like the manifestation of the great Tao of thunder. The other side showed the grand scene of the opening of the sky. A burly man rubbed his hands together, and a bolt of lightning fell. Within the lightning, there seemed to be a heaven and earth, and a world was born, as if it contained a complete world. It carried the vast power of a world. The thunderclap flag. It was, and still was, the timeless ark's most powerful offensive treasure. Wherever the divine lightning went, the gray lightning tore through the void. Although it was not as powerful as the commotion caused by the explosion of the wormhole, it was not any weaker. The surrounding void trembled and distorted. If an ordinary late-stage primordial chaos expert or even a peak primordial chaos expert was hit by this thunderbolt, he would probably be half dead. Buzz. Because of the Permethau Bridge and the passing water lamp's space-time freeze, although it didn't bind the beast for long, it was still able to stop the beast for a moment, allowing the Dutian thunder to strike it solidly. With this collision, a terrifying roar erupted on the spot, like the dull sound of a drum. The power of countless Dutian thunder erupted. Anyone who came into contact with it would be injured, and anyone who came into contact with it would be injured. The terrifying lightning was everywhere, filling up the entire world and filling one's sight. Those who did not know better would think that they had arrived at a sea of lightning. The power of the Dutian thunder was so powerful that it could be said to be one of the most powerful divine abilities in Pan Gu's chaotic world. Even in the boundless void, it was ranked highly. Pan Gu relied on the Dutian thunder, the sky-opening axe technique, and a few priceless treasures, which could unleash immortal mighty power with the power of primordial chaos. Therefore, the outcome of the void beast being struck by the Dutian thunder was predictable. However, its entire body was shrouded by the divine lightning. Even though its physical body was strong, it could only hold on for a moment before it was charred black by the lightning. The Dutian god thunder didn't stop at all. It tore apart the scales, and then smashed into the interior of the void beast. The Dutian god thunder didn't stop at all. It tore apart the scales, and then smashed into the interior of the void beast. Waves of destructive aura surged into the void beast's body through the torn parts. These void beast's physical bodies were indeed strong, almost comparable to priceless treasures. However, while they might not be strong on the outside, their internal defenses definitely couldn't compare to the external ones. Once the outer defense was torn apart, the damage to the inside would be huge. Die! Since Fang Qingshan had made his move, Yang Mei naturally wouldn't just stand by idly. He first pointed into the distance, and an extremely pure spatial law landed on the Otherworld Bridge. The Otherworld Bridge was a priceless spatial treasure, so its power could only be maximized in the hands of someone who cultivated spatial law. With Yang Mei's augmentation of the spatial origin energy, the stone bridge that seemed like it was about to be overturned by the void beast suddenly seemed to have been augmented by a Mount Bujo. It instantly stabilized a lot. Then, after the thunderclap flag activated the Dutian thunder, Yang Mei took out a scepter and swung it down. This scepter was jade green and crystal clear. The body of the scepter emitted a light that was sacred and dazzling, and a hollow willow tree with 3,000 willow branches appeared around it. Countless spatial law and spatial Tao runes were imprinted on it, and nomological chains wrapped around it like a giant dragon. A shocking aura rose, and the entire void was filled with the sound of the space Tao. Green Willow Scepter. Yang Mei's Dao verification numinous treasure was not inferior to that of Hongjuan's purple cloud palace. Furthermore, it was activated by a peak primordial chaos expert. In terms of power, it was above the thunderclap flag. The Void Beast's original defense was torn apart by the Dutian thunder of the thunderclap flag. Therefore, this move was really ruthless. The green willow scepter directly pierced the Void Beast's body. There was a ripping sound that sounded like silk being torn. The Void Beast was tens of thousands of meters in size, and its body was covered in scales. It exuded a torrential aura and ferocious energy that constantly radiated from its body, pouring out in all directions. Even though the void of the universe was vast, Fang Qingshan could still clearly sense it. If it had been someone else, even a peak primordial chaos expert would not have dared to go head-on with him. Unfortunately, he should not have met Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei. Both of their cultivation levels were top-notch, and they each had a priceless treasure in their hands. Fang Qingshan's timeless arc and Yang Mei's green willow scepter. These were priceless treasures that could allow one to challenge someone of a higher level. Moreover, the two of them had to quickly get rid of the Void Beast and leave this troublesome place to avoid any complications. They had really gone all out. Therefore, even though the Void Beast was powerful, it did not cause much of a stir when the two of them joined forces to attack it. However, under their combined attacks, the Void Beast let out a wail that sounded like an undead bound by a death scythe. Large patches of scales fell off, and some were directly charred while some even evaporated. Its body was like a sieve, and blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing a large area of the void red. In particular, Yang Mei's scepter strike was a fatal blow. For a moment, the Void Beast could not help but reveal a look of despair in its eyes. Chapter 1260. A cornered dog would jump over a wall, and a cornered rabbit would bite. Explode. Just as the Void Beast was about to perish in the hands of Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei, an extreme pressure suddenly erupted from the Void Beast's body. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei's expressions changed drastically. Damn it! Freeze! Freeze! The two of them roared at the same time. Fang Qingshan summoned the Bell of Chaos, while Yang Mei summoned the Green Willow Staff. At the same time, they used space-time freeze. Although the Bell of Chaos was not a simple space-time treasure, it suppressed the might of the primordial world, distorted the power of space-time, evolved the power of Hongjun Tiandao, and refined the powers of earth, water, fire, and wind. In terms of grade and foundation, it was probably above the Thunderclap flag. There was no need to mention the Green Willow Staff. The two of them unleashed these two treasures at the same time and froze the Void Beast for a moment. Then, the timeless arc quickly raised its defenses and turned into a streak of light, fleeing far away. Rumble. Then, an earth-shattering sound rang out. In the void, it was quiet and boundless. Under normal circumstances, it was very difficult to hear any sound. What to be seen was mostly darkness. Countless stars flickered in the depths of the darkness, as if they were the eyes of gods, as if they contained endless mysteries. However, as the saying went, cicadas chirping in the forest was quieter than birds chirping in the mountains. It was precisely because this place was usually too quiet that the slightest commotion would be particularly loud and eye-catching, easily attracting the attention of nearby living beings. Of course, the prerequisite was that there were living beings nearby. After all, the boundless void was too vast. If it was too far away, they would not be able to rush over in a short time. Setting that aside, the commotion caused by the Void Beast's self-detonation was not as great as the wormhole. However, this was a matter of 1 + 1. The Void Colossus had been attracted by the wormhole because of the huge commotion. Now that the Void Colossus had self-destructed and caused a huge commotion, if there were any living beings in the vicinity, they would definitely be attracted over. Of course, this was not the most annoying thing. The most annoying thing was that the power of the Void Beast's self-destruction was not weak at all. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei had cast space-time freeze in the nick of time, gaining a slight chance to dodge. But in the end, it was too late mainly because the timeless arc was too close. Although the timeless arc was fast, the power of the self-destruct was even faster. It was like rain falling on a banana leaf, smashing into the timeless Arkansas. Even with the unparalleled defense of the Great Void Immortal Armor, it was still enveloped by the destructive power. It also let out a series of wails, and countless fine cracks appeared on it, continuously spreading in all directions. It looked like it was going to collapse at any moment. Fortunately, the timeless arc only had the Great Void Armor for pure defense. But both the Gourd of Life and Death and the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth had strong defensive capabilities, especially the Bell of Chaos, which was no weaker than the Great Void Armor. Therefore, it was more daunting than dangerous. However, they had worked so hard and gained nothing in the end. It was like drawing water with a wicker basket. Wasn't this displeasing? Actually, this was one of the reasons why Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei were unwilling to fight head-on with the Void Beasts in the beginning. It was needless to say that these Void Beasts were difficult to deal with. This was also because they had encountered Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei today. If it had been anyone else, even a peak primordial chaos expert would not have been able to deal with it. In fact, the Void Beasts were also a considerable resource. Their bodies were treasures, and if they could kill them and harvest their corpses, it would also be a considerable amount of wealth. For example, if they dismembered the octopus-like beast in front of them, its tentacles and scales were excellent materials for refining cardinal treasures. Even its flesh was good medicine for tempering the body. However, very few people were willing to hunt void beasts. As for the reason, it was because this guy liked to self-detonate at the final juncture. Furthermore, he liked to catch people off guard. It was as if it had installed a self-destruct program. Once it fell into a desperate situation, it would immediately self-destruct. Void beasts were not weak in the first place, so the power of their self-destruction was naturally imaginable. Under normal circumstances, it could not be stopped at all. That way, in the end, they would gain nothing. Instead, they would get into trouble, and the losses would outweigh the gains. Therefore, apart from battle maniacs, very few people were willing to provoke void beasts. Fortunately, the problem was finally solved. What made Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei heave a sigh of relief was that at this moment, no other creatures were attracted over. There was no time to lose, lest things change. The two of them could not care less about the displeasure in their hearts. They hurriedly identified their direction again and returned to their original track. Then, they steered the timeless arc away from the crime scene as fast as they could. In the chaos, there was no time and space. It was difficult to distinguish up, down, left, and right. The boundless void was the same, and it was even better than the chaos. This was because the boundless void was too big. Although it was not completely dark inside, and there were some twinkling stars in the distance, like lighthouses, once one flew in that direction, they would feel as if they had always been in the same place and had not moved at all. This was even more hopeless than running a horse to death. Without the correct route, even if one followed the light, there was almost a 99% chance that they would get lost in the depths of the void. Walking in a void was like falling into a maze. If one could not find the correct route, and if one's mind was not strong enough, they would soon feel frustrated and irritated because of this. The void had 4 dangers. The first was void bandits, the second was void beasts, the third was natural disasters, and the fourth was this boundless loneliness and darkness. Although the last one was the least dangerous, it was also the most hopeless when one really got lost in it. Fortunately, although they had experienced the wormhole explosion and the void beast's interception. However, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei did not stray too far from the established track. Moreover, in the Timeless Arc, the Zhodian Star Catalog not only had a partial void route map that the Poison God Marquis and the others had told them about. There is also the Book of Luo River Diagram, a deduction treasure. Moreover, there was the compass technique. The group of people quickly returned to the correct orbit. The waves of the sky faded, but the heat could not stay. Time quietly passed as the eternal heavenly vessel continued to fly without rest. At the beginning, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei were still on guard. afraid of encountering void beasts or void bandits. However, after advancing for half a month without encountering any, they were able to relax a little. Only then did Fang Qingshan have the mood to properly appreciate this unfamiliar boundless void. When they first entered the boundless void, Fang Qingshan was still full of curiosity about the void. He was curious about this and that, and there were endless sceneries along the way. He was in high spirits from day to night. In response, Yang Mei smiled and did not say anything. However, he did not entertain him. He found a place to meditate in seclusion. This was because he knew that Fang Qingshan would soon get tired of it. Back then, he was the same. Chapter 1261. Sure enough, it was just as Yang Mei had expected. Soon, Fang Qingshan found it boring. When he first saw it, everything was so fresh and fascinating. It was like a treasure that he could not help but want to explore. However, after looking at it for a long time, although the scenery was still the same, it became the same in his eyes. It lost its freshness and immediately made him feel a little bored. In fact, this matter was very easy to understand. No matter how beautiful the scenery was, one could not stand looking at it every day, and no matter how good the food was, one could not stand eating it every day. It was just like when an emperor visited the people. Why would he feel that home-cooked food was better than delicacies? It was because he had eaten too much and would occasionally change his taste and feel that it was fresh. If he were to eat this every day, would he still feel that there was nothing more delicious in the world? The logic made sense. Therefore, after admiring it for more than 10 days, Fang Qingshan finally became numb. Hence, Fang Qingshan, Mosquito Dowrin, and the World Tree clone quickly found a place to cultivate in seclusion, just like Yang Mei. As for the control of the Timeless Ark, it was naturally handed over to the Thunder Emperor. With the Thunder Emperor's help and the correct route, Xiao Chun did not encounter any unforeseen events along the way. He did not know whether it was because extreme misfortune turned to joy. Therefore, in the next 6 months, Fang Qingshan and the others seemed to be very stable and calm. The Timeless Ark followed the marks on the route map and continued moving forward. At this speed, it was even faster than the speed of light. In every breath, it would cross countless areas. Accidents often happened when one was least expecting it. Just when Fang Qingshan, Yang Mei, and the others thought that they could reach the next chaotic world smoothly, an accident finally happened. However, before that, because traveling in the boundless void was too boring. Therefore, after the initial excitement, Fang Qingshan and the others each found a place in the Timeless Ark to cultivate in seclusion. What cultivators lacked the least was time. A nap could take thousands of years, but what they lacked the most was time as well. This was because the further they progressed in their cultivation, every little bit of progress, if not fated, required painstaking effort. Usually, tens of thousands of years were the unit of measurement. According to his calculations, it would take the Timeless Ark about a year to reach the next chaos world, even if he didn't sleep or rest. Although it didn't sound long, Fang Qingshan didn't waste it. However, if he were to use this time to comprehend the Tao in seclusion, it would probably be over by the time he took a nap. If he was lucky and happened to fall into a state of enlightenment, it would be even worse. If he was woken up, it would be a pity. Therefore, Fang Qingshan changed to a different method. He used an ultimate treasure to practice his skills. Not only was the Timeless Ark's grade constantly improving, but the market was also improving. In the past, there were only a few strange treasure buildings of various sizes. Now, there were rows upon rows of them, but they were almost there. Among all the strange treasures, there was one called the Mirror Image Tower. This was a strange treasure that could replicate any scene or creature the host encountered. It was possible to replicate the boundless void, the primordial world, the Emperor God, or the Emperor God. Of course, the premise was that this strange treasure could grow to the corresponding grade and strength. The host could fight with these replicated creatures to accumulate experience and adapt to the rhythm. Now, Fang Qingshan didn't use the Mirror Image Tower to replicate the boundless void, the primordial world, the Emperor God, or the Emperor God, because there was no need. Even if it could be replicated, he didn't need the creatures. Right now, he only needed the mirror image tower to replicate immortal experts, various chaotic worlds, and parts of the boundless void. The mirror image tower was now divided into 3 levels. The lowest level replicated the desolation world. The creatures inside were all at the peak of the sage-to-be. Basically, they were all top gods in the desolation world. There were 12 Zhu-Wu, the patriarchs of the Dragon and Phoenix clans, Tai Dijun, Zhen Yuanzi, Ming He, and even Sanxing before he became a sage, Jin, Nua, Hongjun, Ro, and so on. The second level replicated the Pan-Gu chaotic world. This time, the creatures inside were not only the sages in the desolation world. Sanxing, Jet-In, Jinti, Nua, Hutu, Ro, Hongjun, Yang Mei, Black Tortoise, as well as Shura Sovereign, Jin Yuanzi, and Hao Yin, who had just become a sage. There were also the immemorial experts on Poison Marquis side, Poison Marquis, Baitong, Dragon Slayer, Madame Baiwa. Even Fang Qingshan himself, Mosquito Daoran, and the World Tree clone were among them. As for the third level, it replicated the boundless void. The beings inside were either undying experts or beings with undying battle power. For example, Pangu, Primordial Sky Demon, and, however, compared to the first 2 levels, the third level was not perfect. One was because of the level of the mirror image tower and the level of the timeless Arkansas. Another was that if the mirror image tower wanted to replicate the corresponding environment, Fang Qingshan had to experience it himself. First, let's talk about the environment. Although it had replicated a portion of the immeasurable void, but this part of the boundless void was derived from what Yang Mei and Poison Marquis had seen and heard after entering the void, so it was somewhat illusory. As for the living creatures, there were far fewer of them compared to the other 2 levels. Only Pangu had truly materialized. This was naturally because he was an immortal expert. Fang Qingshan had too little knowledge and did not observe carefully. Although the mirror image tower was mysterious, it could not create something out of nothing. The reason why Pangu could evolve it more perfectly was that Fang Qingshan knew the 12 Zhu-Wu and Sanxing very well. In addition, he had climbed Mount Buzhou and personally felt Pangu's pressure. He had also obtained Pangu's heaven-opening brand. Even so, the Pangu evolved by the mirror image tower was not Pangu at his peak. At most, it only had the 8-stage strength of Pangu's true body, which barely reached the immortal combat power. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan's current cultivation level was only at the late-stage primordial chaos, so he did not need to use the 3rd level. Yes, Fang Qingshan's cultivation level had broken through the 7th-stage primordial chaos and entered the late-stage primordial chaos. Naturally, this was all thanks to the challenge tournament. Of course, it was also because he had already reached the peak of the mid-stage primordial chaos. Therefore, with a little stimulation, he had succeeded. Even so, even if Pangu and the others were not at their peak, Fang Qingshan would probably be smashed to pieces in a second, including the timeless Arkansas. Therefore, in order to achieve the effect of the experience, Fang Qingshan could only choose the 2nd level, the mirror image tower. On the 2nd level, Fang Qingshan was currently fighting with various primordial chaos experts, including his true body and clone. He fought to the end and forgot about everything else. Every day, he had to fight hundreds of times inside until one side fell. Chapter 1262. Combat was the best teacher. The battles in the mirror image building might not be 100% real. Most importantly, one wouldn't really die if they died here. Therefore, even though they would forget about everything else and fight to their heart's content every time they fought, they knew from the beginning that their lives wouldn't be in danger. This situation was still very different from a real life-and-death battle. Even so, the flaws couldn't obscure the brilliance. Furthermore, even though they wouldn't really die, it didn't mean that they wouldn't have to pay a price for dying in the mirror image building. At the very least, each death would cause great damage to the principal spirit. In other words, Fang Qingshan's cultivation level and the condensed immortal substance were the same level. This meant that Fang Qingshan's cultivation level had reached the 7th-stage primordial chaos realm, and the condensed immortal substance had also reached the 7th stage. The principal spirit's attribute was already full of immortality and indestructibility. This kind of immortality and indestructibility wasn't like the Hongjun Tiandao immortality of sages. Instead, the mighty power belonged to one's body. As long as one wasn't seriously injured by more than 7 levels, one could recover quickly. In addition, Fang Qingshan had various healing priceless treasures, such as the upgraded version of the Triple Light Sacred Water and the Origin Spirit Liquid that had a super strong healing effect on primordial chaos realm injuries. In addition, the mirror image building didn't just have a replication effect. It also contained a space-time effect. This was also why Fang Qingshan could fight hundreds of times in it every day. Time after time of fighting, time after time of falling, and time after time of death, Fang Qingshan's battle prowess naturally increased exponentially. His combat skills, supernormal abilities, and mystic techniques were sharpened and refined. He was almost as proficient as the person on the Poison Marquis side during the arena battle. He had cultivated all kinds of supernormal abilities to the acme of perfection and executed them like an antelope hanging its horns. During this period of time, not only had Fang Qingshan completely consolidated his cultivation level at the 7th-stage primordial chaos realm, but he had also tempered it to the extreme. The next step was how to break through to the 8th-stage primordial chaos realm. In particular, the constant fights with the Poison Marquis, Madame Baiwa, the Woodcutter, and the others had given Fang Qingshan a clear understanding of the infinite void and the combat mode of the myriad realms. This was very helpful for the situation he was about to face next. Host, there's a situation. As Fang Qingshan was immersed in the battle in the Mirror Tower, the Thunder Emperor's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. In a moment of carelessness, he was directly KO'd by the opponent's Yang Mei. In the blink of an eye, Fang Qingshan was kicked out of the Mirror Image Tower. His face was pale, and he felt a stabbing pain in his head. God damn it. Thunder Emperor, why didn't you warn me properly? You caused me to die again, and my soul was heavily injured. Fang Qingshan rubbed his temples and complained. Special circumstances require special treatment. Moreover, it's not like you've truly died. Besides, there's always a great possibility that you might be able to reap a great harvest if you're lucky. The Thunder Emperor's voice didn't fluctuate at all because of Fang Qingshan's complaints. When Fang Qingshan heard this, he couldn't help but grin. These words seemed to make sense, and he was speechless. However, he also knew that the Thunder Emperor would not speak without thinking. Therefore, with a thought, he came to the core space where the eternal lightning pool was. What's going on? Fang Qingshan raised his eyebrows and asked quietly. There's movement not far ahead, and it's not a small one. Should we avoid it, wait, or intervene? The Thunder Monarch appeared beside Fang Qingshan and gave him a simple and quick account of what had happened. What do you think? According to common sense, it was better to have one less trouble than one more. However, Fang Qingshan thought for a while and didn't make up his mind immediately. Instead, he asked a question. This is the only way to the next chaotic world. Once we avoid it, it's easy to get lost. As for waiting, it's not a solution. After all, no one knows which direction they're going to retreat to. Therefore, I suggest that we go and check it out before making a decision. The Thunder Emperor said calmly. In that case, let's go and take a look. After secretly activating the river diagram of the ancient book, he found that the divination was not bad. Fang Qingshan also didn't sense too much danger, so he calmed down. Sigh, the Timeless Ark is still short of a scouting-type spiritual treasure. Fang Qingshan sighed in his heart. In this situation, it would be great if the Timeless Ark had a spiritual treasure like the Clear Sky Mirror. There was no need to take the risk of approaching it. However, this completely depended on fate. Although Fang Qingshan had obtained many treasures, he hadn't seen many similar treasures. It was either the grade was not good enough, or it had other uses. However, Fang Qingshan had already made up his mind. If it was possible, he would integrate the last remaining Eternal Divine Furnace unit into a scouting-type treasure. However, the conditions didn't allow it, so Fang Qingshan had to take the risk. Under the control of the Thunder Emperor, the entire timeless arc turned into a tiny speck of dust. Then, he took out the Bell of Chaos and shrouded the timeless arc inside. In Fang Qingshan's timeless arc, there were various eternal divine furnace units integrated into it. Under normal circumstances, their functions were very simple. For example, the Death Scythe, the Horn of Chaos, and the Shocking Thunder Flag were all offensive spiritual treasures. The Great Void Divine Armor was a purely defensive spiritual treasure. The Permitha Bridge, the Passing Water Lamp, and other spiritual treasures with special attributes. Even if there were treasures with multiple uses, such as the Treasurefall coin, which was the mother coin of the divine coin, it could also be used as a special spiritual treasure. The Zodion Star map could be turned into a formation map, and it could also be used as a star path coordinate map. Only the Bell of Chaos was the most special because it had the most effects and was outstanding in all aspects. In terms of attack, it was not inferior to the Shocking Thunder Flag. In terms of defense, it was comparable to the Great Void Divine Armor. It could freeze space-time and was better than the Permitha Bridge. Its sound waves were unparalleled, and it was not weaker than the formation breaking drum of 10,000 beasts. In addition, it had another function, which was to conceal one's whereabouts. In fact, it wasn't an invisible spiritual treasure. Instead, it was developed from concealing the secrets of heaven and the space-time attribute. Once it was taken out, the timeless arc could hide in the void. No one in the world would be able to find a trace of it. It would come and go without a trace, making it even more mysterious. It would also be safer. Of course, the saying that as long as one was willing, no one in the world would be able to find it was a bit absolute. After all, the world was huge, and there were all kinds of strange things. However, under normal circumstances, without special treasures, mystical powers, or high cultivation levels, one could still deceive everyone. However, under the cover of the Bell of Chaos, the timeless arc seemed to have completely merged with the infinite void. It silently arrived at the crime scene that the Thunder Emperor had found. At the sight of this, Fang Qingshan's eyes narrowed into slits. The reason was simple. He had encountered a familiar sign. Fang Qingshan had just entered the infinite void, so he must have seen something familiar in the Pan-Gu Chaos realm. Now that he had seen it in the Pan-Gu Chaos realm, he could see it again in the infinite void. Obviously, its target was the Poison God Marquis and his party. Chapter 1263. It's a small world. When Fang Qingshan arrived at the place where the Thunder Emperor had discovered the commotion, the first thing that caught his attention were the flags fluttering in the wind. Of course, it wasn't because these flags were special or powerful, like the Thunderclap flag. They had the power to shake the world. Rather, it was because these flags had a special meaning. These flags were completely blood red, as if they had been soaked in blood. One could faintly smell the stench of blood. There was also the outline of a half-covered face, with the corners of its mouth slightly curled up, revealing a mysterious and sinister smile. Void bandits. Anyone who traveled the void all year round or belonged to a major faction would immediately understand that this was a group of void bandits when they saw the flags hanging at the bow of the ship. One could even tell that this group of void bandits belonged to one of the top 10 void bandits, the Lifeless Demon Palace. Yes, the reason why Fang Qingshan was familiar with these symbols was because he had seen the exact same flags on the Poison God Marquis and the others. However, compared to the Poison God Marquis and the other small team, the Lifeless Demon Palace's void bandits were more than twice as large. Numerous void cruises filled with a strong air of thieves spread out in all directions. Although these ships couldn't compare to Fang Qingshan's timeless arc, they were still abnormally strong. Their materials weren't simple, and they were ordinary goods that traveled the void all year round. However, they were filled with a thick stench of blood, and their baleful aura was overwhelming. One look would make one shudder. Clearly, one could tell the whole picture from a single spot. Who knew how many life and death battles they had experienced, and how much blood had stained their hands? The only thing that could be said was that these bandit ships were of all kinds, perhaps because they had been robbed. There were magic-type ships, immortal-type ships, technology-type ships. There were battleships, palaces, bird nest-type ships. One look, and one could tell that they were a motley crew. They seemed very disorganized. However, this wasn't important. As long as their attacks and defenses were strong, even a pile of shit would be enough to make people tremble in fear. The kind of ship naturally reflected the kind of master. The thieves on such a powerful thief ship were naturally no pushovers. Fang Qingshan roughly sized it up. In terms of numbers, the number of bandits here was at least 10 times that of the Poison God Marquis. As for the quality, it was needless to say. The Poison God Marquis and the others were just a small team from the Lifeless Demon Palace. Their most powerful team leader was only at the mid-stage Primordial Chaos realm. Of course, the Poison God Marquis was a bit special. After all, he was a titled Mixed Yuan. Currently, there were more than 50 mid-stage Primordial Chaos cultivators and more than 10 peak mid-stage Primordial Chaos cultivators. There were still 3 late-stage Primordial Chaos experts. One of them had even reached the peak 9th-stage Primordial Chaos and was only 1 step away from the peak Primordial Chaos. Could it be a large group? Fang Qingshan thought to himself. His guess was not wrong. This was indeed a large group. Moreover, it was the brigade that the Poison God Marquis and the others belonged to. In addition to Palatial Lord Extermination Demon Venerate, the Lifeless Demon Palace also had 2 deputy Palatial Lords for Elders and 8 Guardians. The World Extermination Demon Venerate, Intelligence, and Secret Guards each had a Hall Master, 2 Deputy Hall Masters, several Team Leaders, and countless Team Leaders. Among them, the Deputy Hall Masters and above were all immortal experts. As for the Deputy Hall Masters, they were all at the 12th stage Primordial Chaos realm, a half-step immortal expert. In order to become a team leader, one had to be at least at the 10th stage Primordial Chaos realm or at the 9th stage Primordial Chaos realm. Under normal circumstances, unless there were any major movements, the immortal experts above the Deputy Hall Masters would stay in the headquarters. They would either guard, enter seclusion, or travel around. The various large and small teams will be active outside all year round. In order to prevent vicious internal competition, each large and small team had its own territory. Under normal circumstances, they could not cross the border. The reason why a large force from the Lifeless Demon Palace had appeared here was because of the Poison God Marquis and the others. As a subordinate force of the Lifeless Demon Palace, although the internal management was lax, they still needed to pay tributes and report the situation every once in a while. When the Poison God Marquis and the others discovered the wormhole, they immediately entered it. In order to enjoy the benefits alone, they did not report it. It was not a problem for a short period of time, but as time passed, his superior naturally found out that something was wrong. Of course, he did not find out that the Poison God Marquis had evil intentions, nor did he discover the wormhole. Instead, he thought that the Poison God Marquis and the others had met with misfortune. Regardless of whether they had kicked an iron plate or been betrayed, he definitely had to investigate clearly. This was also the case for a bandit force like the Lifeless Demon Palace. If it was a proper sect, there would not be such trouble. Once they entered the sect and became an official disciple, they would light up a natal lamp. Whether a person lived or died depended on whether the lamp was lit or extinguished. Putting all this aside, when this large force arrived at the Poison God Marquis' original territory, they immediately began a carpet search. This was also because Fang Qingshan and the others had arrived in time, and the wormhole itself was very well hidden. Otherwise, the wormhole would not have been hidden at all. From this aspect, Pangu's Great Path of Chaos will decisively destroying the wormhole after Fang Qingshan and the others left was a wise move. Otherwise, they would have been exposed one day. It was just a matter of time. Putting all this aside, logically speaking, these bandits should have continued to search for the Poison God Marquis and the others. Why were they all gathered here? Of course, this was inseparable from the nature of Void Bandits. As Void Bandits, how could they not make a move when they encountered a fat piece of meat? Yes, they had found out that a fleet would pass by this area recently, so they had set up an ambush here, ready to rob it. Right now, the lifeless Demon Palace's fleet was surrounded by this fleet. Although this fleet was not as large as the lifeless Demon Palace's fleet, there were still more than 10 void ships. Moreover, the largest of these void ships was even bigger than Fong Qingshan's timeless ark, and it exuded an incomparably shocking aura. As for the remaining ships, although they could not compare to this leading sheep, they were not at a disadvantage when compared to the lifeless Demon Palace's fleet. If they had not been ambushed and surrounded in advance, coupled with the lifeless Demon Palace's superior numbers, they would not have been able to keep them here. However, even though they had been surrounded by the lifeless Demon Palace's fleet, they had not been able to take them down in a short period of time. This showed that these people were not easy to deal with. However, although their strength was not bad, they were still inferior to the lifeless Demon Palace's fleet. Moreover, they had fallen into the ambush. If they did not think of a solution soon, or if something unexpected happened, these people would most likely end up in the hands of the lifeless Demon Palace. Once they fell into the hands of the Void Bandits, unless they had a monstrous background, their fate was predictable. Chapter 1264. Second Missy, what we do now? On the huge ship surrounded by the lifeless Demon Palace, there was a luxuriously decorated room in the core. At this moment, there was a man and a woman, one old and one young. The young woman was dressed like a man. She stood upright like a jade tree, and her smile was like a bright star entering one's bosom. She gave off a feeling of cleanliness, or perhaps it could be said that she was transparent. Although she was a woman, she didn't give off a feminine feeling. Of course, she wasn't a tomboy either. Instead, she gave off a hearty and generous feeling. Even though she was surrounded by the lifeless Demon Palace, even though the situation was extremely dangerous, she didn't seem worried at all. As for the old man, although he looked like a servant of this woman, he was very respectful towards her. If one underestimated him because of this, it would be a huge mistake. This was because his aura didn't seem to be any weaker than Yang Mei. He seemed to be a peak primordial chaos stage 12 expert. At this moment, although his tone was filled with worry, this worry wasn't because of the lifeless Demon Palace, but because he was worried about the woman in front of him. It wasn't because he was afraid that the woman would be harmed by the lifeless Demon Palace, but because she was from a prestigious family. From this, it could be seen that the identity of the woman in front of him was definitely not ordinary. After all, how could someone who could use a primordial chaos stage 12 as a servant, someone who could be as steady as a mountain after being ambushed and surrounded by a large group of the lifeless Demon Palace? After all, just the name of the lifeless Demon Palace alone was enough to strike fear in the hearts of ordinary people and those who were not from the top forces. After all, back then, because of the lifeless Demon Palace's unbridled behavior, several forces ranked in the top 1,000 and below 500 in the Great World had invited dozens of Immortal Realm experts to besiege the lifeless Demon Palace. These Immortal Realm experts were probably stronger than Pangu at the very least. Although the strongest among them wasn't a peak Immortal Realm expert, they weren't too far off. However, they all failed in the end. Even a Deity Emperor expert could not do anything to him. This battle was considered to have brought out the might of the lifeless Demon Palace. Although they kept their edge after that, their reputation didn't diminish. Instead, they became one of the top 10 forces in the Void Bandits. This could be seen in the eyes of the members of the other ships that were surrounded. They were worried and fearful. Why don't we just break out of the encirclement or use the name of our sect? Although the lifeless Demon Palace is arrogant and unruly, they don't dare to provoke us. At that point, the old man's face was filled with pride. Clearly, he had a strong sense of belonging to the sect and was very proud of it. I told you to call me young master, young master, young master outside. The woman, or rather, the young master, was lazily leaning against a brocade chair. Her eyes were as bright as the stars. She first corrected the old man's way of addressing her before speaking in a tone that was neither fast nor slow. It's easy for us to break out, but what about the others? Once you fall into the hands of the lifeless demon palace, you will definitely die. As for the title of a sect, that was even more inappropriate. You should know that I came out this time to gain experience. If I have to rely on the sect for everything, then why should I leave the sect? Yes, miss. The old man's expression didn't change in the slightest, but he still did as he pleased, causing the young master to hold his forehead. He felt very helpless, but there was nothing he could do. Obviously, the two of them were master and servant, but they were more like family. When the old man saw this, he couldn't help but smile and reply, "Who cares about the others? If they didn't want to make use of you and were greedy, they wouldn't have lured the lifeless demon palace here. Since they're so heartless, don't blame us for being unjust." It turned out that this time, the young lady before him had left the sect to travel and met the family of this fleet. The family of this fleet was knowledgeable and could tell with one look that the young lady before them, who was disguised as a man, was not ordinary and had a very powerful background. Wasn't that right? The peak of the 12th level of the Origin realm could become a true disciple in most forces. Even if one was old, one could become an elder. But now, she had become a servant. This alone was enough to make one not underestimate her. Therefore, from the beginning, he had ill intentions. Of course, to say that he had ill intentions was a little over the top. However, it was true that he had ulterior motives. However, what he did wasn't annoying. This family was a merchant family. They had traveled extensively and were knowledgeable. This was what the young lady was interested in. He catered to her interest and told her everything he had seen and heard. His narration was very interesting. Usually, she was very courteous to this second young master. If he needed anything, as long as it was within his capabilities, he would make the necessary arrangements. All he wanted was to use the identity of a woman to escort the family's fleet and deliver a batch of goods. This way, he could earn a lot of money. He had clearly stated this point at the very beginning, which made him seem very magnanimous. It was because of this that the second young master allowed him to make use of her. This was a form of repayment. After all, as people from big sects and forces, they cared a lot about their reputation. This was especially so for their sections. They didn't dare to say that they would repay a favor with a drop of water. However, they couldn't return kindness with enmity and go their separate ways in the face of disaster. Even if they didn't reveal their identity, if they didn't repay their kindness, or if they didn't do anything, they would at least be thankful for their hard work. If they didn't reward them and other disciples of the same level found out about this in the future, they would become a laughing stock. You can't say that. If I didn't want to be used by them in the beginning, I could have just turned around and left. Now that I am in danger, it is immoral of me to leave. If this gets out and people think that I am afraid of the lifeless demon palace, it is not a big deal to ruin my reputation. But if I ruin the reputation of my sect and my big brother, that will be troublesome. Hearing the second young master mention her big brother, the image of a person appeared in the elder's mind. He shuddered. It was obvious that this person had left a deep impression on him, and it wasn't a good impression. Then what should we do now? The reason why he asked the second young lady to leave was because he was worried about her, and he didn't want her to take risks. At this moment, because the second miss mentioned his big brother, the old man immediately stopped talking about leaving and brought the topic back to the original topic. Do I have to use my trump card to defeat them? Of course not. The second young master unfolded a folding fan and waved it as he spoke in a relaxed manner. If it was just an immortal realm expert from the lifeless demon palace, it would be fine. But it is just a troop. Using my trump card on them is a waste. It is like using a cannon to kill a mosquito. Not worth it, not worth it. We can't do this, we can't do that. What is second young lady planning? The elder rolled his eyes and said impatiently, Uncle Wong, don't worry. Even if we don't do anything, we can still ask for help. The second young master chuckled. Chapter 1265. Outside help. Uncle Wong frowned. He felt that the second young mistress was taking things for granted. How could there be such a coincidence? There were very few people in the void. How could they meet a cultivator who could help them? Besides, such a big commotion would cause most people to avoid it. Who would come to join in the fun? Although it was natural for people to watch a commotion, it meant trouble in the boundless void. Most people would avoid trouble if they could, except for a few supreme-grade people. Small troubles were fine, but big troubles could threaten one's life. Although the path of cultivation required one to be brave and diligent, the necessary caution was still essential. Attracting other living beings was fine, but attracting some void beasts might be more reliable. Moreover, even if there were, who could guarantee that they had the strength to help them? This was a team from the lifeless demon palace. Those who could become team leaders were at least 10th-stage primordial chaos or 9th-stage primordial chaos. The team leader was a 9th-stage primordial chaos who was very famous in the vicinity of the boundless void. This team was called the Tautai team. They were greedy by nature. Once targeted by them, surrender was fine. However, if they resisted, they would definitely die. Didn't they see that he had about 10 small teams under him? Ordinary teams only had 3 to 5 small teams. Although the team leader of the Tautai team was only at the 9th-stage primordial chaos, he was a titled primordial chaos and not an ordinary titled primordial chaos. Given his combat strength, even Uncle Wong, who was at the 12th-stage primordial chaos, had no chance of winning, let alone a 10th-stage primordial chaos. In addition, apart from him, there were 2 late-stage primordial chaos subordinates who were also at the 9th-stage primordial chaos. Although they were not as good as the team leader, they were still very difficult to deal with. If the 3 of them formed an array formation, it would be even more troublesome. Moreover, even if they had the strength, who would help them if they were not related to them? Perhaps they would just sit on a mountain and watch the tigers fight. They would be the fishermen who reaped the benefits when the sandpiper and clam fought. Putting all this aside, just the name of the lifeless demon palace was enough to make people shrink back. Who would be willing to offend them for a complete stranger? Therefore, Uncle Wong could not help but shake his head secretly. Miss was still too young. However, since Miss had said so, Uncle Wong released his spiritual consciousness to look around. Unfortunately, he did not find anything. Second young master could tell what Uncle Wong was thinking with just one look, but he didn't care. Her slender eyes flickered. She didn't look at the fleets that were retreating in defeat. Instead, she looked outside the encirclement behind the people. That was where Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei were. Uncle Wong didn't notice Fang Qingshan and the others, but second young mistress did. The reason why he did not leave by himself, nor did he use his trump card to repel the lifeless demon palace, nor did he use his sex name to scare the lifeless demon palace away. It was not because she was pedantic, but because she had discovered Fang Qingshan's group. She had a unique treasure on her, within a certain range around her, as long as it didn't exceed the power of the unique treasure, such as a high cultivation level, a special concealment ability, or a spiritual treasure. She would be able to sense even the slightest movement. She sensed Fang Qingshan's presence the moment he approached. At the end of the day, while the Bell of Chaos was of a good grade and had a strong foundation, the unique treasure in her hands wasn't inferior to the Bell of Chaos. Moreover, the Bell of Chaos wasn't a true concealment treasure. While every function was strong, this also meant that none of its functions had reached their limits. Otherwise, if only one function was retained, be it offense, defense, or support, the Bell of Chaos would have become a connate treasure. However, if that was the case, this treasure wouldn't have fallen into his hands so easily. It wouldn't have appeared in Taiyi's hands in the first place. After all, other than the Wu people's Pangu Hall, only Hong Jun and Yang Mei had chaos spirit treasures in the entire desolation. However, the 2 of them were special existences. Every peck and every drink, every gain and every loss had karma. Fang Qingshan definitely didn't know that he had been discovered as soon as he got close. If he had known, he probably wouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. At the end of the day, he had too much trust in the Bell of Chaos and underestimated Boundless Void. Of course, just like the Bell of Chaos, every peck and every drink, good and bad, who could say for sure before it happened? After all, the future was ever-changing. A small deviation might cause a completely different outcome. Moreover, if he hadn't met the second young mistress, others might not have been able to discover him. Taoist, I'm Jiang Minghua. I'm in some trouble now. I wonder if Taoist can help us? I'll repay you once it's done. Jiang Mingyue's mouth moved slightly as she used a secret telepathy technique. Is there really someone else nearby? Uncle Wong raised an eyebrow when he saw that, but he didn't ask much. Fong Qingshan, who had just arrived at the periphery of the battlefield and was about to take a good look, suddenly heard a strange telepathy. He had yet to recover from the shock of the lifeless demon palace. He immediately rose to his feet. His eyes glowed as he scanned his surroundings. He couldn't hide the shock in his heart. In fact, it was easy to understand. After all, you thought you were foolproof and hid in the dark to reap the spoils. However, in the end, you realized that your every move was under someone else's control. You're in a difficult situation. I was too careless. Fong Qingshan sighed to himself. He still hadn't adjusted his mindset. He was the top existence in a desolation world. Naturally, he could do whatever he wanted. However, in Boundless Void, he was at the bottom. He had to be cautious and think twice before he acted. First, it was the Void Beast. Now, it was as if he had been hit in the head. His whereabouts were easily exposed. However, Fong Qingshan's mental fortitude was outstanding. His initial shock was only because he was caught off guard. He quickly adjusted his mental state and looked at the void cruiser that was surrounded by the lifeless demon palace. From the voice transmission of the person who had just arrived, Fong Qingshan quickly determined who it was that had sent him a voice transmission. Taoist, what do you think? Although the two were not facing each other, they seemed to be able to see each other through their eyes. Jiang Mingyue paused after sending the voice transmission. She seemed to be giving Fong Qingshan some time to react. After a while, she asked again, Taoist Jiang, you must be joking. What you've encountered is not just some trouble. It's the lifeless demon palace. I can't afford to offend them. Fong Qingshan said in a deep voice. Putting aside the fact that they had only met by chance and did not know each other at all, just the fact that he was easily discovered by Jiang Mingyue while he was hiding at the side was enough for Fong Qingshan to bear grudge. Chapter 1266. Just as he had said, the lifeless demon palace was not a force he could afford to offend. Not to mention him, there were only a handful of people who could afford to offend the lifeless demon palace in the boundless void and the edge of the 10,000 worlds. Before he left the Desolation Sect, he had specifically asked the Poison God Marquis and the others to understand the basic situation of the boundless void. He was afraid that he would be like a headless fly in an unfamiliar place. If he was not careful, he might accidentally enter a dangerous place and offend people and forces that he should not offend. The forces that he should not offend naturally included the lifeless demon palace. Although the Poison God Marquis and the others had exaggerated, it was not far from the truth. The lifeless demon palace was a colossal force. Although it was not a top force in the boundless void, it was not a small force either. Any hall master, protector, or elder would be enough to put him in danger of dying. Although the universal chessboard was good, he needed time to activate it. Moreover, they did not even give him time to activate it. If they sealed him or even had the ability to pierce through space, he would not be able to escape. Most importantly, the lifeless demon palace was a group of void bandits. They were the hardest to deal with. Unless you could destroy them in one go, or hurt them in one go, otherwise, if you killed one, there would be two more. If you beat up the young, there would be the old. Even forces that were on par with the lifeless demon palace, or even slightly stronger, or even immortal realm experts, would try their best not to offend them, let alone Fong Qingshan. Just a small team led by the Poison God Marquis had caused a huge commotion in the Desolation Sect. Now that he was facing a large team, Fong Qingshan did not think that his small body could withstand the torment. Moreover, Fong Qingshan had entered the boundless void in order to break through his cultivation and broaden his horizons. If he got into trouble with the lifeless demon palace the moment he arrived, he wouldn't be able to do anything else other than trying to save his own life and escape. Even a fool wouldn't do such a thing, let alone a wise man. Taoist, you are wrong. Seeing that after Fong Qingshan's whereabouts were exposed by her, he didn't turn around and flee like a frightened bird. Jiang Mingyue was even more certain of her thoughts. At the same time, He looked at Fong Shan even more highly. After all, when people mentioned the lifeless demon palace, it was rare for them to not turn pale. Even though Fong Shan said that he couldn't afford to offend the lifeless demon palace, he was only wary. He wasn't afraid at all. Just this point alone was enough to show that he was a cut above the rest. As for why she was so certain that Fong Shan could help her solve the problem before her, it was because she was born with a powerful physique called the body of danger. Although this kind of physique didn't help much in terms of cultivation, attack, defense, etc. But in terms of staying alive, it was top-notch. Sense danger, sense danger, sense danger, and avoid it. It was equivalent to a cultivator's sudden inspiration. The cicada sensed it before the wind moved, and the impermanence of death was unknown. Moreover, it was stronger and faster than that one. In addition, she also cultivated a divination technique that was very compatible with the body of danger. Thus, she was able to predict good and bad fortune to the point of perfection. This was also why she dared to travel when she was only at the mid-stage primordial chaos realm with a 4th-stage cultivation level. Of course, it was also because of the protection of Uncle Wong, a 12th-stage primordial chaos realm expert. Putting all this aside for the time being, she had already predicted that things wouldn't be peaceful this time when the caravan had wanted to use her as an escort. However, she didn't care. Although there was danger, the divination technique showed that there would be no danger and that there would be help. Sure enough, they had encountered an ambush from the lifeless demon palace. She had a unique treasure that could detect movements in the surroundings. Within a radius of tens of thousands of miles, besides the lifeless demon palace and themselves, there was also Fong Shan and his group. Who else could the divination have shown if not them? Now, after seeing Fong Shan's actions, she was even more certain of her thoughts. It's just the lifeless demon palace. What's the big deal? Jiang Mingyue said boldly without the slightest hint of fear in her tone. Obviously, if she wasn't a fool, she was very confident. No one who could cultivate to the primordial chaos realm was a fool. As for her confidence, since she still needed his help, it was obvious that she had a backer. Unfortunately, distant water could not quench a present thirst. Moreover, this is just a large team from the lifeless demon palace. We aren't facing them directly. This is indeed just a large team. However, once we provoke the lifeless demon palace, we won't rest until one of us dies. The Taoist isn't afraid of them, but I don't want to be a fugitive. Fong Shan didn't change his mind in the slightest after hearing Jiang Mingyue's words. Her lips moved up and down. It was easy for her to say. After all, if Fong Shan didn't understand wrongly, given his background, even the lifeless demon palace wouldn't dare to provoke him casually. However, he wasn't one of them. The void bandits were like dog skin moss. Once they set their sights on them, they wouldn't be able to get rid of them no matter what. Not to mention the fact that they had just entered the boundless void, even some powerful forces and almighties wouldn't want to provoke them, especially when they were from the lifeless demon palace. Taoist, I'm an intersect disciple of the Tao sect. If you help me today, I'll owe you a favor. How about that? Jiang Mingyue said again when she saw Fong Shan reject her. This time, she promised a huge reward. Second young lady, you can't. Before Fong Shan could reply, Uncle Wong's expression changed drastically as he shook his head in disbelief. It's not like we don't have any means to deal with them. Why we need to ask for help and owe them a favor? Not to mention the weight of this promise. Just the fact that they did not need to ask for help from outsiders was not worth paying such a huge price. Moreover, they did not know what kind of person this person was. What if he was born evil or did not get along with the Tao sect? Uncle Wong, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. The second young lady waved her hand calmly. The reason why she didn't want to use her trump card and instead made a promise directly was because she could feel that doing so would be beneficial to her. Although she didn't know the specifics, her intuition told her what she should do. Intuition, heart, and sixth sense. This was the most direct instinct of a cultivator and also the most powerful talent. Most of the time, when they encountered danger or bottlenecks, everyone relied on this safety to get through it calmly. Not to mention, the second young lady had the danger perception physique and a suitable calculation method. But Uncle Wong wanted to say something. However, the second young lady waved her hand again and said calmly, "Trust me, Uncle Wong. Trust me, Uncle Wong. Have you ever seen me suffer a loss?" Hearing her words, Uncle Wong couldn't help but choke. After thinking about it carefully, that was really the case. For a moment, he was speechless. I hope the second young lady is right this time. Chapter 1267. Uncle Wong's eye was not because he was making a fuss over a minor issue, but because this involved the sect that Jiang Mingyue belonged to. Dao's sect. Jiang Mingyue might have simply said that she owed him a favor, but those who were familiar with the myriad heavens would know that she did not say it in vain. Instead, she said it as an oath. Dao's sect, Dao Justice Sect. Although this sect was not in the top 100 forces in the myriad heavens, it was ranked 220th. There were god emperors in the sect. During its peak, the Dao sect even entered the top 100, and there were god emperors in the sect. However, because they placed too much emphasis on promises, once they made a promise, no matter the price, they would fulfill it. Because of this, there was one time when the Dao sect paid too much of a price. Because of this, their god emperor level ancestor died, and the sect fell from the top 100 to where it was today. But because of this, the Dao sect had a good reputation in the myriad heavens. It was simply a living signboard. Not to mention ordinary people, even the true disciples of the top 100 forces in the myriad heavens would be proud to receive a promise from the Dao sect. And the reason why the Dao sect placed so much emphasis on promises was related to the foundation of their sect. The existence of the Dao was the existence of righteousness. Making a promise was like sowing karma. Once the promise was fulfilled, it was equivalent to resolving the karma. Without karma, one would be free, thus achieving the effect of weakening the bottleneck. But if one made a careless promise and did not fulfill it, one's cultivation would not improve, and in serious cases, one would suffer from the backlash of the great Dao. Why did the God Emperor of the Dao sect take the risk to enter the danger zone? It was not because he was truly righteous, but because he had no other choice. If he went, he might meet with misfortune. If he did not, he would definitely suffer from the backlash of the great Dao. Hence, the choice was obvious. But no matter what the reason was, the process was not important. What was important was the result. The other party had fulfilled his promise. Dao sect. Hearing this name, Fang Qingshan's mind immediately recalled the top 1,000 forces in the boundless void that the poison god Marquis had specially mentioned. In the boundless void, among the 10,000 worlds in the universe, the strongest world was naturally the one in the center, the top 100 worlds. Of these worlds, even the weakest had god emperors. Furthermore, there were more than one of them, and not just early-stage god emperors. In each of these worlds, there was at least one major force that ruled over everything. These forces were the top 100 forces in the universe. Of course, some world might not be ruled by just one force. There might be 2 or 3 super forces. Of course, these could only be accommodated by the top 10 chaotic worlds. Let's not talk about these first. Let's talk about the Dao school first. In the past, when the Dao school was at its peak, it was ranked 89th. There was a peak early-stage God Emperor Old Ancestor in the school. Unfortunately, later on, because of a promise, he charged into a dangerous place in the boundless void to rescue someone. In the end, he was heavily injured, and even though he managed to escape, he perished not long after. The death of a God Emperor caused a huge commotion. The impact it caused nearly shook the entire all heavens. Because of this, the Dao sect was kicked out of the top 100 forces and fell to 220th place. Fortunately, because of their righteousness, the Dao sect had many good karma. Although it was because they had fulfilled their promise, they also had many allies. However, it was only a drop in ranking and the corresponding decrease in power. But they did not find much suppression and division. Because of this, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. The reason why the Dao sect's ranking dropped so much It was just because they did not have the highest combat power of a god emperor. Once they had another god emperor, even if they did not immediately advance to the top 100, it would not be a problem for them to enter the top 150. Of course, this was all in the future. When Fang Qingshan heard the three words Dao will sect, a strong thought suddenly arose in his mind. Join a sect. Yes, join a sect. As the saying goes, it is good to enjoy the shade under a big tree. To better integrate into the all heavens, joining a sect was the simplest and most effective way. Of course, to join a sect, one naturally needed to join a big sect, a sect that could help him a lot. Otherwise, not only would it be useless, but it would also drag him down. Just like in the immortal world in the past, if not for joining the emergent sect, even if Fang Qingshan could cross various worlds, he would have to take a long detour to rise. After all, if it wasn't for the Ascension sect shielding him from the wind and rain behind him, how could he rise up so smoothly in the desolation? The reason why he did not join Hongjun and join the Celestial sect was because at that time, he was already strong enough to deal with most of the dangers. He was a towering tree, so he did not need others to send him to the clouds. In the all heavens, in the boundless void, Fang Qingshan could be said to have returned to the time before liberation. It was as if he had just crossed into the immortal world. He was not so familiar with the environment and the people here. The most important thing was that he was weak. Even if he had the all heavens chessboard as a life-saving trump card, even if he had the timeless arc to improve his combat power. But there were limits to these things. He did not rely on these two things to be able to run amok. After all, he had treasures. Did others not have them? Moreover, the timeless arc and the all heavens chessboard were not the best. Maybe others were luckier than him and got better treasures? Now, Fang Qingshan wasn't afraid of anyone under the Undying Realm, or even normal Undying Realm experts. But for experts above the middle immortal stage, he might not even have the chance to escape. This was also the reason why he was so reluctant to provoke the lifeless Demon Palace. But if he joined a sect, the situation would be completely different, especially when the sect was still very strong. At least, no cat or dog could bully him at will. If he was a rogue, cultivator, although he had freedom, it was not difficult to move an inch, but he would definitely be restricted everywhere. Once he resisted, he would lose his life. Even if he won, he would not be able to escape well, because if he beat the young, he would attract the old. In the desolation, why were the disciples of the sage so proud, arrogant, and disdainful of the world? Wasn't it because of the sage's backing, others did not dare to do anything to them? If he could join the Dao will sect, in addition to enjoying the shade under the big tree, there were two other benefits. First, it could make Fang Qingshan's cultivation more smooth. Although he had the timeless arc, which could give him eternal blessings, it was not an orthodox cultivation. As for Pan Gu's heaven creation mark, it could at most support his cultivation to the immortal realm. As for the cultivation after that, Fang Qingshan was confused. If he did not have a sect and explore by himself, not to mention how many detours and how much time he would waste, the most important thing was that once he took the wrong path, it would affect his future cultivation, and in the worst case, he would go mad and die. Therefore, he needed a place to preach and solve his doubts. Chapter 1268. Wealth, Companions, Laws, and Land. The four elements of cultivation. Although Fang Qingshan, Mosquito Dowrin, the World Tree Clone, and the Timeless Arc were all big eaters, Fang Qingshan was barely able to use his wealth. At least, he had a ruined city, and his resources would be enough to last a long time. If he had the Timeless Arc, it wouldn't be so important anymore. As for companions and laws, Fang Qingshan couldn't do anything about them. Companions didn't just refer to cultivation companions or partners of both sexes. They also referred to a Taoist who could discuss the Tao and a teacher who could preach the Tao. Laws were even simpler. They refer to cultivation methods, including divine abilities, secret techniques, cultivation techniques, and so on. Companions were slightly simpler. Even if he was a rogue cultivator and didn't have a master, he would still have a few good friends. Then, laws were really not easy to obtain. unless it was by chance and obtained the legacy of predecessors. The truly good things were in the hands of the family or sect. Therefore, Fang Qingshan needed to join a sect. Furthermore, and most importantly, the Dao Will sect was currently in a period of decline. Although it didn't sound good, those who had extra choices would be the first to rule them out. However, to Fang Qingshan, this might not be the best, but it was the most suitable for him. After all, although the Dao Will sect was in a period of decline, it was still a top sect in force. It was only because they lacked top combat power that their foundation was not inferior to the top 100 forces. In addition, the Dao Will sect had once formed a good relationship. As long as they didn't go overboard, most people would give them face. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a disciple of the top 100 forces who would be proud to have Chun Nuo from the Dao Will sect. Completely satisfied, Fang Qingshan's thought of enjoying the shade under a big tree was enough to support him. Not to mention the immortal realm, it wouldn't be a problem for him to become a divine emperor or a celestial emperor. Therefore, although the Dao Will sect was in a period of decline, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Moreover, to Fang Qingshan, the Dao Will sect being in a period of decline was not only harmless but beneficial to him. The period of decline meant that they needed to work hard to catch up, take out their foundation to cultivate the strength of the new generation, and strive to restore the glory of the past as soon as possible. The sect's atmosphere was different from other large forces that were in a relatively rigid state. Even if the other major powers were to join, it would not be easy for them to be nurtured in a short period of time. After all, they did not lack geniuses. Moreover, the fixed forces of the sect had already been divided. Unless one had the ability to pierce through the heavens, one would definitely not be able to do well in the Dao Will sect. On the other hand, the Dao Will sect's strong foundation meant that it had sufficient resources, so there was no need to worry about not being able to nurture its disciples. Of course, the prerequisite was that you had to display sufficient value and talent. Regarding this, Fang Qingshan was not worried at all. Instead, he was very confident. Firstly, because of the decline of the Dao Will sect, their standards for accepting disciples had been lowered. In other words, the requirements for accepting disciples would be loosened. After all, the Dao Will sect had declined. As for the geniuses in the boundless void and the myriad of worlds in the universe, people always strive for greater heights. If they could join a better sect, why would they choose the Dao Will sect? This also meant that the Dao Will sect was at a disadvantage when it came to recruiting genius disciples. In reality, this was indeed the case. Ever since the fall of the Emperor God of the Dao Will sect, the first few years were still fine. However, as time passed, the number of genius disciples that the Dao Will sect accepted decreased with each passing day. If this continued, it would be difficult for the sect to maintain its current state, let alone rise again. Therefore, now they had loosened their requirements. As long as one was a genius, they would not be picky. As long as one was not malicious towards the sect, the Dao Will sect was willing to accept and nurture them. This would reduce the test and contribution time of other sections. Secondly, there was the Timeless Arkansas. As the owner of the Timeless Ark, Fang Qingshan's status was naturally not weaker than those geniuses. With this status alone, he could enter a large sect. This was equivalent to him getting a ticket to enter. Furthermore, Fang Qingshan's talent was not weak. Although he dared not be compared to the disciples of those born sacred beings who were at the primordial chaos realm the moment they were born, he was definitely a true genius. At least in terms of cultivation speed, it was very rare for Fang Qingshan to cultivate to this stage in a short time in a desolate place like the Pangachaotic world. Of course, there was also the fact that he had a deep source of fortune. Without a deep source of fortune, how could the heaven chessboard go from an acquired numinous treasure to a connate treasure that was no weaker than the 24th grade Red Lotus of Fire? Without a deep source of fortune, how could he obtain treasures like the heaven chessboard and the Timeless Ark? Considering all these issues, the chances of Fang Qingshan joining the Dao Will sect were very high. The sect needed genius disciples, and he was the genius disciple that the Dao Will sect needed. One was willing to fight, and the other was willing to suffer, which complemented each other. If another inner sect disciple recommended him, it would be even better. After entering the boundless void, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei had actually discussed how to develop in the future. They were very willing to join a big sect, as they felt that this was the most suitable and best method for them, be it now or in the future. However, although they wanted to join a sect, ordinary sects were not attractive to them at all. However, it was very troublesome to get a ticket to join a big sect. This was because they could not explain their origins clearly. In order to prevent enemy sects or the infiltration of evil forces, a stranger wanted to join a sect, and so on, they definitely had to investigate this person's ancestors and origins clearly. However, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei were like black accounts now, and their origins could not be investigated. Once they followed the clues, they would either find nothing, which was basically impossible. Otherwise, they would find out about the Pangu chaotic world, which meant that they were indirectly exposed and violated their oath. Naturally, they would not have a good time. Therefore, this was a problem. However, now that they had Jiang Mingyue's recommendation, this step could be avoided. This was because every inner sect disciple had a recommendation slot. This was to prevent a pearl in the ocean from being lost, and to gain the upper hand by striking first. As such, how could Fang Qingshan not seize the opportunity? Of course, after saying so much, Fang Qingshan had already made a prompt decision and made it clear. Taoist Jiang, I can help you defeat the people from the lifeless demon palace, but I don't want your favor, or rather, I want you to use your favor right now. I hope you can fulfill your promise. Oh, Taoist, just let me know if you have any requests. As long as I can do it, it won't be a problem. Jiang Mingyue's interest was piqued. As the saying went, 1,000 cups were not enough when drinking with a bosom friend, but half a sentence was too much when the conversation didn't go well. Not only was she not unhappy with Fang Qingshan's words, but she also felt that this kind of straightforward approach was very much to her liking. Chapter 1269. Although Jiang Mingyue was a girl, she had been influenced by her elder brother or elder sister since she was young. She was very bold and straightforward. Otherwise, she would not have dressed up as a man. It was a long story. When Jiang Mingyue's mother was pregnant with her elder sister, she had always dreamed of having a son. Unfortunately, she gave birth to a daughter. Although it was a pity, they did not mistreat her. They only raised Jiang Mingyue's elder sister, Jiang Yuanba, as a man. Yes, her elder sister had a very domineering name, Yuanba. She did not know if it was because she was raised as a man or if it was in her nature. If Jiang Mingyue was a straightforward, cultured, and elegant man, then Jiang Yuanba was a true Jianghu hero who ate big bowls of meat and drank big mouthfuls of wine. Furthermore, it was to make a decision first so that there would be no chaos later. Fang Qingshan made his request first. If she could do it, everyone would be happy. If she could not, or the disadvantages were greater than the advantages, it would be more beneficial for him to reject it as soon as possible. You can definitely do this. Fang Qingshan smiled and said decisively, That's right. I want you to recommend me to join the Dao sect. What? Join the Dao sect? Jiang Mingyue was stunned. She thought about many of Fang Qingshan's requests and even the Lion Dragon King's big mouth, but she really did not expect Fang Qingshan to ask for this. Then she frowned. Taoist is a rogue cultivator? It was not that she looked down on rogue cultivators. After all, the truly powerful rogue cultivators did not lack powerful people. However, they were still in the minority. Under normal circumstances, there were still too few capable people among the rogue cultivators. At this moment, she was beginning to suspect that something had gone wrong with her calculations. Could it be that the person I deduced was not him? That's right. Fang Qingshan did not know what Jiang Mingyue was thinking and nodded indifferently. Then you should also know the requirements to join the Dao sect. Jiang Mingyue nodded and did not say anything else. Instead, she changed the topic and tested him. Although things were somewhat out of her control, and Fang Qingshan's request was somewhat beyond her expectations, it was still within her acceptable range, or rather, it was not difficult at all. After taking a breath, Jiang Mingwei said, although she had the right to recommend disciples, it was precisely because of this that she had to bear some consequences. For example, if this disciple made a huge mistake, she would also be implicated. If the disciple's aptitude was too poor, she would lose face and so on. Moreover, although there weren't many opportunities for geniuses to appear among rogue cultivators, there might still be a pearl in the vast sea. That was why he asked this question. In addition, once one joined a sect, they would have a disciple's recommendation. Although it would save them the trouble of investigating one's background, the necessary examination was still necessary. For example, did he agree with the core ideology of the sect? As the saying goes, those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. If he did not agree, then such a disciple would definitely not be able to enter the sect, and the sect would definitely not nurture him. For example, were they filled with malice towards the sect? Were they spies from other sects? Of course, the most important factor was still aptitude. Of course, I know that. Fang Qingsha nodded. Although he didn't fully understand, he had a general idea of the process. However, he was very sure that as long as Jiang Mingwei recommended him, it would save him the trouble of investigating his background. The Dao sect would definitely accept him. However, he still revealed one thing. I am the master of the timeless arc. What? The master of the timeless arc? Hearing this, Jiang Mingwei immediately heaved a sigh of relief, and her eyes lit up. The master of the timeless arc was a very unique group in the infinite void and the myriad worlds. This was because as long as they didn't fall along the way, their achievements would not be small. At least in the myriad worlds, there had never been a lack of master of the timeless arc among the famous god emperors and god emperors. Moreover, the master of the timeless arc not only had great potential, but his combat power was also not to be underestimated. He was at least at the legend rank. Such a person would have no problem joining the top 100 forces in the myriad worlds, let alone the Dao Will sect. At this time, Jiang Mingwei finally confirmed what was going on with her previous calculation method. Not only could she solve the problem in front of her, but she could also rope in a genius for the sect and add points to herself. After all, although recommending a genius would require a certain amount of responsibility, if the recommended genius developed well, the recommender would not only receive incense offerings, but also be rewarded by the sect. All right, as long as the Taoist doesn't harm the interests of the Dao Will sect, I, Jiang Mingwei, will recommend you to join the sect. However, if you do anything that harms the sect, don't blame me for being ruthless. After Fang Qingshan revealed that he was the master of the timeless arc, Jiang Mingwei didn't even have the thought of asking Fang Qingshan to help and directly agreed to his request. Although she also made a threat, one could see the whole picture. From this, one could see the Dao Will sect's desire for genius disciples. In fact, although on the surface, the Dao Will sect seemed to have shrunk and its ranking dropped a little, it wasn't excluded, suppressed, or devoured. However, the sect wasn't doing well either. The pressure on the sect's disciples and elders was great. Without the patriarch to shield them from the wind and rain, they lacked confidence. Although they weren't suppressed or excluded, they were at a disadvantage in normal competitions. The strength of the entire sect was getting weaker and weaker year by year. The master of the timeless arc. How many years had it been since the Dao Will sect had such a disciple? Now that the sect was stable and there was no turmoil, nothing could be seen for the time being. However, once something big happened, or if the person who had made a promise in the past came looking for them and asked them to complete the dangerous task that the patriarch had done in the past, they would probably be in a precarious situation. Just like the Jiao Mansion, when there was no accident, it was naturally full of flowers, guests, and tall buildings. However, once the mountain collapsed, the sky would collapse and the earth would sink. Therefore, after the fall of the patriarch, the Dao Will sect only did 3 things. The first was to behave with their tails between their legs, dig deep holes, and accumulate food. They would shrink their forces as much as possible and eat as much as they could so that they wouldn't be targeted by others. Otherwise, even if they were quite strong and had some kinship with them, the Tao will sect probably wouldn't keep their face. After all, this was a place where profits were the most important. When the people left, the tea would cool down. The second was to recruit genius disciples from all over. In addition to the deterrence of top-notch nuclear weapons, the sect's strength also depended on the mainstay of the rising stars. After all, with the combat power of the Patriarch, he definitely couldn't be at the forefront of everything. This required genius disciples to hold up the facade. The third was to use their many years of accumulation and foundation to nurture these genius disciples as much as possible. Casting a wide net, they hoped to be able to rise from among them. Only in this way could the Tao will sect rise again. Otherwise, once there was a problem, the monkeys would scatter when the tree fell. Chapter 1270. Wealth did not last more than 3 generations, and poverty did not last more than 5 generations. A gentleman's grace could be exhausted in 3 lifetimes and severed in 5 lifetimes. The principle was the same. A man could not live a good life for 1,000 days, and a flower could not bloom for 100 days. Of course, for a large force, especially one with a deep foundation, as long as there was no major change, even if there was a little fluctuation, it would not be too big. They could just rely on their foundation to endure it. At most, there would be a change of 3 or 5 ranks. However, if there was a major change, the situation would be the same. All these years, from the beginning of the world until now, who knew how many eras had passed? The top 100 forces in the universe had not remained the same. It wasn't like something like the Tao will sect had never happened before. In fact, it was a common occurrence. More than half of the original top 100 forces had been replaced by latecomers. Some, like the Tao will sect, encountered an accident, and the sect's patriarch had collapsed. Some sects had no successors, and Wang Xiao was getting worse every year. Even with the support of the patriarch, it was impossible to rely on the patriarch for everything. Some of them were surpassed by those who rose up later on. As the saying goes, talented people will appear in every generation, and each of them will lead the way for hundreds of years. Every era has its own main character, and their rise is unstoppable. Once they stand on the wrong side and can't keep up with the rhythm, it is reasonable for them to be replaced. Of course, the most miserable kind was internal strife. The sects would become rigid, fighting for power and profit, and the walls would be broken when trouble arose. He remembered that there was once a power called the Two-Polarity Palace. Because of the internal strife within the sect, a huge battle broke out and the old ancestor of the sect was killed. As a result, the sect was destroyed in the blink of an eye. In that case, thank you very much. Hearing Jiang Mingyue's agreement, Fang Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. As for the threat after that, he had selectively forgotten about it. For now, let me help you get rid of the people from the lifeless demon palace. You can get rid of them? Jiang Mingyue was a little worried now. After all, Fang Qingshan was the master of the timeless arc and a disciple of the Tao sect. His future was bright, but now that he was a rogue cultivator, she was not sure. If it was before, she wouldn't have cared. But now, she didn't want Fang Qingshan to take the risk. Just like how Uncle Wang was worried about him in the beginning, a gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. She had decided to use one of her trump cards. When she left the sect, her big brother, or perhaps it should be said big sister, gave her a trump card. Under undying rank, other than those with extremely good luck or those born in big powers, whoever touches it will die. Although such a trump card was one less card to use, compared to a genius disciple like Fang Qingshan who would become a big shot in the future, it seemed insignificant. Don't worry. Fang Qingshan nodded his head. He was not someone who would flaunt his strength. The reason why he was willing to make such a seemingly unnecessary move at this moment was because he had already made a move. It was all because he wanted to display his combat prowess. He wanted to show that he was stronger and more valuable. Geniuses, those who don't grow up, are all trash. With the timeless arc, he had already demonstrated his talent. If his combat ability was also strong, not only would it be easier for him to enter the sect, but he would also receive more training in the future. Of course, at the same time, he didn't let his guard down or look down on the lifeless Demon Palace's team. Besides, he was a cautious person and understood that it was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, given his current cultivation level, he wasn't qualified to look down on the lifeless Demon Palace's Taodai team. After all, he had heard from the Poison God Marquis about the power of his team leader, who was a titled Primordial Chaos like him. However, the Poison God Marquis was only a low-level titled Primordial Chaos, while his team leader was a high-level titled Primordial Chaos with many trump cards. Nevertheless, he was still confident. Firstly, he was in the dark, while the enemy was in the open. If he caught them off guard, he would definitely be able to achieve unexpected results. Secondly, he wasn't fighting alone. He had a helper, Yang Mei. Yang Mei couldn't be underestimated. He wasn't any weaker than Uncle Wang, and had even comprehended some eternal Tao runes. Even if he didn't rely on the timeless arc, it wouldn't be too much of a problem for him to deal with an ordinary 9th-stage primordial chaos expert. Uncle Wang, wait a minute. See if there's a chance to cooperate with them. Just as Fang Qingshan summoned Yang Mei and was about to make a move, Jiang Mingyue instructed Uncle Wang. Since Fang Qingshan was willing to make a move, Jiang Mingyue didn't stop him. Just as he wanted to show off, Jiang Mingyue also wanted to see more. However, she still reminded Uncle Wang, lest she lost the big picture because of a small gain. Second miss. Do you really believe what he said? Uncle Wang didn't hear that Fang Qingshan was the owner of the timeless Arkansas. He was still in a dilemma and couldn't help but frown when he heard what Second Miss had said. Moreover, I have to protect you. Then, Uncle Wang shook his head again. His most important responsibility was to protect Jiang Mingyue. Therefore, no matter how big the commotion outside was, he didn't leave. It doesn't matter whether I believe him or not. Jiang Mingyue revealed a smile. The problem now is to ensure that nothing happens to him. If it really doesn't work, I'll use the talisman my sister left me. As for my safety, you don't have to worry. I'm not a porcelain doll. Although her cultivation was not high, even the Marquis of the Returning Ruins might not be able to take her down in a short time. Ever since she knew that Fang Qingshan was the owner of the Timeless Ark, Jiang Mingyue's attitude had completely changed. As long as she could recommend him into the Dao sect, she would definitely get a lot of benefits. This was a reward from a sect. The more talented the person recommended, the more rewards he would get. Secondly, once Fang Qingshan grew up, he would naturally be the Jiang family's ally. Although the internal environment of the Dao sect was good and there was a healthy competition, this was because there was no patriarch and external pressure, and also because the Dao sect itself didn't have that much intrigue. But healthy competition was still competition. Once Fang Qingshan grew up, Jiang Mingyue didn't expect him to become the ancestor of resurgence. But as long as he became a god emperor, no, even a peak immortal realm expert like the Demon Lord Extermination, they would make a big profit. The sect was so big and had so many resources. A slight tilt was enough to make people jealous and drool. Huh? Uncle Wang was a little dumbfounded. Didn't he say that it would be a waste to use his trump card? Why did he suddenly have an idea? Uncle Wang shook his head. Young people nowadays change their minds too quickly. He couldn't keep up with the rhythm. However, no matter what he thought, complained, doubted, or unwilling when it came to it, he would still do what Jiang Mingyue asked him to do. This was because he didn't forget his duty. At the same time, he knew that although Jiang Mingyue was young, she would never speak without thinking. Chapter 1271. Dang, dang, dang. Just as Jiang Mingyue's voice trailed off, a series of resonant bell sounds resounded through the nearby void. Everyone's movements involuntarily froze. It was not just the Marquis of the Returning Ruins, but Jiang Mingyue's group as well. This sound wave attack was partially aimed at both sides. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan's sound wave attack was not meant to hurt anyone, but to make everyone pause. As expected, everyone's movements and reactions were slower by half a beat due to the surprise. Then, a water-like fluctuation swept across the battlefield. The lifeless Demon Palace bandits who were unscrupulously attacking Jiang Mingyue's fleet suddenly seemed to freeze. Even their primordial spirits could not move, and even breathing became difficult. It was as if time had suddenly stopped at this moment. An invisible mighty force affected the entire battlefield, imprisoning this part of the world. The Bell of Chaos was powered by the power of the timeless arc and the eternal lightning pool. Even Tao Ye's team leader was a little dazed and affected, let alone the other lifeless Demon Palace bandits who were engaged in battle on the entire battlefield. However, this wasn't the end of it, because at the same time that the bell rang, a towering tree stood there. It was completely dark green, sparkling and translucent, and its trunk was like a heavenly pillar. It had 3,000 branches, and every single one of them seemed to be no smaller than the Void cruise ship here. There seemed to be a mysterious spatial vortex on each branch and willow leaf. It constantly rotated, absorbing the power of space from the void bit by bit and integrating it into the entire ancient tree, enhancing a corner of the world. Yes, the entire tree was a chaotic world. The branches and willow leaves were also a desolation world. The boundless world nestled and surrounded it, a restraining force that was not the least bit weaker than the Bell of Chaos, and even stronger, fell like a waterfall and blessed the tree. After all, Yang Mei's cultivation had reached the peak of Primordial Chaos Essence's 12th level, and he was even more powerful than an ordinary peak Primordial Chaos Essence's 12th level. In the end, he had crossed the great heaven-opening tribulation, breaking through and establishing. As for the Timeless Arc, it was only at the supreme grade. Although it was more powerful than the average, and although the Chaos Bell was a top Khanate Supreme Treasure evolved from a Chaos Supreme Treasure, Yang Mei's main body, the Hollow Willow Tree, was a top Chaos Spirit Root. Tao Ye's captain, Qin Lei, who was also known as Marquis of the Returning Ruins, immediately discovered Feng Qingshan's move. However, firstly, Qin Lei was careless. When he ambushed Jiang Mingyue and the others, he had already cleaned up the surroundings and felt that there was no problem. Feng Qingshan's sudden appearance caught him off guard. Furthermore, Feng Qingshan had attacked too quickly, and the combination of the Bell of Primordial Chaos and the Eternal Heavenly Boat was simply too powerful. Even with his cultivation base and trump cards, he hadn't been able to react in time. By the time he came back to his senses, the warriors under his command and the void ship had been frozen in midair, motionless. In this regard, he naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. He immediately wanted to use his magical power to break free. However, before he could use it, Yang Mei had already made her move. Spatial chains that were as thick as an arm descended from the sky. There was a silver glow on them that flowed like water. Impressively, they were numerous mysterious runes. They were added to the attack of the Bell of Chaos. The two of them worked together and brought out the best in each other. It was like adding wings to a tiger. It completely displayed the effect of 1 + 1 was greater than 2. Damn it! If the Bell of Chaos only caught him off guard, then Yang Mei's simultaneous attack made his expression change greatly. The main thing was Yang Mei's cultivation. Even if he fought alone, although he was confident that he wasn't weaker than others and was even more powerful, he couldn't take down Yang Mei in a short period of time. It was clear that the surroundings had already been swept once. Why would there still be other people appearing? It was fine if there were other people appearing, but there were actually experts like Yang Mei and the others. It was simply unforgivable. Of course, now is not the time to think about this. The most important thing now was to break the shackles, devour the heavens and earth. As soon as his voice fell, Qin Lei's entire body suddenly changed and turned into a pitch-black ultimate. There seemed to be countless whirlpools spinning in the entire ultimate. His title of Marquis of Ultimate was not an undeserved reputation. Not only did it confirm their team's title of Tao Tai, which could devour anything, but it also showed that his law of devouring was very extraordinary. However, his law of devouring was somewhat different from Mosquito Doran's. Mosquito Doran relied more on his innate supernatural power. The law of devouring was used to increase his cultivation, while the marquee of ultimate was all-round, whether it was offense, defense, or support. As soon as this technique was used, the entire ultimate was frantically devouring the power contained in the Bell of Chaos and the Hollow Willow, wanting to completely bury them in the ultimate. However, although his supernatural power was powerful, the Bell of Chaos and the Hollow Willow were not easy to deal with. One step behind, one would always be behind. It wasn't that easy to break through in an instant after losing the upper hand. Moreover, Fang Qingshan and Yang did not think that they could suppress the Marquis of Ultimate with just the power of the seal. They used the same method they used to deal with the Void Beasts previously. First, they used the Space Freeze supernatural power to restrain the Marquis of Ultimate. Then they used the Thunderstrike. Even if they couldn't kill them instantly, they would at least hurt them. Moreover, this time, it wasn't just the two of them. After Fang Qingshan and Yang made their moves, Uncle Wang, who had long received instruction from Jiang Mingyue, also followed closely behind and used his strongest move apart from his trump card. Kill. As Fang Qingshan was the first to make his move, his attack was naturally the fastest. This time, he didn't use the Death Scythe, the Thunderclap Flag, or the Life and Death Gourd. Instead, he used the Chaos Demonic Horn that he hadn't used for a long time and directly drove the Timeless Arc over. Whoosh! Right in front of the Timeless Arc, a huge horn that shone like black jade appeared. The slender and sharp horn shone with a terrifying light. Even with their eyes closed, they could feel the sharpness that could tear everything apart, let alone look at it. The Chaos Demonic Horn. It was the hardest and sharpest part of a Chaos Demon God that hadn't matured yet, but it had a strong foundation. As the Timeless Arc grew, it was no weaker than the Life and Death Gourd and the Thunderclap Flag. The eternal lightning pool erupted. The sails fluttered. The Timeless Arc erupted with unprecedented speed and violently charged towards the lifeless Demon Palace's Taotai team and the Marquis of Ultimate. At the same time, Yang Mei also made his move. Space Shatter. However, the space chains that were used to suppress the Marquis of Ultimate broke apart as if they had self-destructed. Crack! All of a sudden, the area that was enveloped by the light cracked like a mirror. Apart from the two of them, Uncle Wang also launched his strongest attack at almost the same time. Whoosh! The silver bottle broke, the water splashed, and the iron cavalry rushed out. It was as if he was using the supreme knife drawing technique. There was a flash of silver light. Uncle Wang took out a peerless treasure saber that was even better than the Death Scythe. Chapter 1272. As a member of the Daoul sect, Uncle Wang used to be a disciple of the Daoul sect. Although he was only an inner disciple and not a true disciple, he was considered an elite. Later, he grew old and lacked potential. Because of a favor, he did not choose to become a deacon of the sect. Instead, he joined the Jiang family and had been guarding Jiang Mingyue since she was a child. Such a person not only had an extraordinary cultivation, but he also had many spirit treasures and magic powers. The saber was a middle-stage, first-class treasure, which was comparable to a top middle-grade Khanate cardinal treasure. In the boundless void, because it had been too long and there were too few people, the spirit treasures were not divided into innate, acquired, or chaotic levels, but one or two levels. Khanate spirit treasures below the Khanate cardinal treasure were not graded in the boundless void at all. Because if one wanted to travel in the void, the primordial chaos realm was the foundation, and for primordial chaos cultivators, a Khanate cardinal treasure was the standard. In the boundless void, the Khanate cardinal treasure was a first-class treasure, which was also divided into low, medium, high, and extreme. Chaotic spirit treasures were second class, chaotic supreme treasures were third class, and so on. The treasure saber in Uncle Wang's hand was refined from the body of a void fierce beast with a praying mantis's blade-like arm. As for the saber magic power, it was the saber intent of the Daoul sect. The Daoul sect, as its name suggested, cultivated the conception of Dao. Whether it was sword intent, Dao intent, or fist intent, as long as it was intent, it was within the scope of their cultivation. With the support of intent, even an ordinary divine ability could unleash earth-shattering power. The saber light suddenly exploded, and a touch of extreme slaughter intent suddenly burst out. The slaughter Tao intent came from afar and approached mercilessly. At first, when the saber was drawn, the sound was weak like a mosquito, but as the saber fell, the sound gradually became louder. When the saber light exploded, there was a roar of mountains and seas, and the shrill sound of a dragon roaring swept over. It was extremely terrifying. Before the saber completely fell, thousands of saber lights had already exploded in the void cruises of the Taotai team and the bodies of the people. Impact. Tear. The weaker ones were directly turned into beehives, while the stronger ones were all smashed into rags and flew backward. Of course, the one who achieved the greatest effect was still Fang Qingshan. The weight of the timeless arc, the speed of the sails, the sharpness of the chaos horn, and the power of the eternal lightning pool. This collision was practically indestructible, and only speed was unbreakable. Anything that was hit by it would basically explode into pieces. One would be injured upon contact, and one would die upon contact. In no time, apart from Captain Qin Lei and the 2 9th-stage Primordial Chaos deputy captains, a few peak 6th-stage Primordial Chaos captains among the 10 teams under the command of Team Taodai had perished on the spot due to bad luck. 2 of them were hit directly by Fang Qingshan's timeless arc and exploded into a bloody mist on the spot. One of them was struck by Yang Mei's space shatter. His fate was not much better than the previous 2. He was instantly dismembered. Another one was chopped in half by Uncle Wang's saber, which was the most honorable. Damn it, damn it! At this moment, Qin Lei, the captain of Team Taotai, was stamping with rage. He looked at his subordinates, who had suffered heavy casualties under the joint attack of Fang Qingshan and the other 2. Even he could only passively take a beating under Fang Qingshan's attacks. Boom! To shoot a person, first shoot the horse. To capture the bandits, first capture the ringleader. Fang Qingshan's primary target was Qin Lei. First of all, he was the captain and the strongest person in Lifeless Demon Palace. At the same time, he was also the commander, the leader, and the strategist. Without him, or if they took a step back and held him back, the remaining people, even if Uncle Wang and the rest of the merchants didn't make a move, even if they didn't completely annihilate them, it would be enough to force them to retreat. After all, a snake could not live without its head. This was also why there was the decapitation tactic. Uncle Wang had not helped the trade caravan previously. Firstly, he felt that protecting Jiang Mingyue was more important. Secondly, he was not confident of killing him with one blow. After all, Qin Lei was not simple. Although he was at the 12th stage Primordial Chaos, he was just an ordinary Primordial Chaos and not a titled Primordial Chaos. Otherwise, he would not have been an inner sect disciple of the Tao sect back then. If they fought, he might not be able to match up to Qin Lei. In addition, Qin Lei had 2 9th-stage Primordial Chaos helpers. Once they joined forces and executed the array formation, he would be trapped at the very least. In the worst case, he might be in danger of dying. It did not matter whether he died or not, but if Jiang Mingyue was hurt, it would be a great sin. After taking care of Jiang Mingyue for all these years, he had long regarded her as his closest person. Therefore, Fang Qingshan had targeted Qin Lei right from the beginning. However, he also knew that, with his cultivation level, it was wishful thinking to kill him, even if he had the timeless Arkansas. As long as he restrained Qin Lei, with Yang Mei's help, the others would be like grasshoppers after autumn and would not be able to do much. Moreover, there was a pleasant surprise. There was also Uncle Wang, who was also a 12th-stage Primordial Chaos expert, to help. Therefore, he was only focused on dealing with Qin Lei and trying to delay as much time as possible. That way, it would also allow Yang Mei and Uncle Wang to free up their hands to help him after cutting off Qin Lei's wings. By then, with the combined strength of the 3 of them, although Qin Lei was extraordinary, he would not be able to do anything. Therefore, it could be seen that the timeless arc was simply like a ferocious tiger coming down from the mountain or a dragon coming out of the sea. It had a majestic aura and moved forward with indomitable will. Relying on the power and speed of the timeless arc, as well as the sharpness of the chaotic demonic horn, it operated the eternal thunder pool crazily and crashed towards Qin Lei at lightning speed. Hastily receiving the attack, Qin Lei almost let out a loud sound as he was knocked backwards. Then, without giving him any time to catch his breath, he crashed into the wall again as he flew backwards. Of course, he was different from the others. After all, Qin Lei was an opponent that even Uncle Wang and Yang Mei did not dare to underestimate. Even though he did not react at the first instance and was caught off guard by Fang Qingshan, even though the timeless arc was extraordinary and overbearing. However, it merely caused him to suffer a little injury. He only seemed to be in a sorry state. When he came back to his senses, he let out an angry roar on the spot. Infinite Ultimate, Reverse. After being blasted backward by the timeless arc once again, Qin Lei finally seized the opportunity to breathe. There was a majestic sound of mountains and seas roaring from his body. Immediately after, he once again performed the devouring power from before. A black spot instantly grew from small to large at the back of his head and grew with the wind. In an instant, it turned into an invisible abyss and a surging force shot out from it. Of course, the devouring power that he performed this time was no longer to devour everything. Instead, it was the reverse force of the devouring power. The ultimate was a force that could even bury heaven and earth. The power of the devouring power was unimaginable. The ultimate was a force that could even bury heaven and earth. The power of the devouring power was unimaginable. Chapter 1273. Boom! Fang Qingshan was about to continue driving the timeless arc toward Qin Lei. Although this kind of attack was no more than scratching an itch through the boot and did not bring much harm to Qin Lei. But in the end, he still managed to restrain him. Furthermore, although such a violent attack might not be stronger than the Thunderclap Flag and the Life and Death Gourd, that kind of experience was extremely satisfying. Fang Qingshan finally understood the mentality of Zhu Wu and those battle maniacs. However, this time, he didn't even have the time to collide over when he saw Qin Lei execute the Black Hole Divine ability once again. He originally thought that Qin Lei was going to devour him, and even thought that he should go with the flow, but he didn't expect that it was actually a repulsive force. The timeless arc, which had been moving forward with indomitable will and was so fast that the naked eye and even the primordial spirit could not react to it, suddenly slowed down. The repulsive force collided with the impact of the timeless arc, producing a sizzling sound of yin and yang, water and fire, light and darkness. In the process of Fang Qingshan driving the timeless arc into Qin Lei again and again, that kind of momentum made the merchant group, the Taotai troop, and even Jiang Mingyue, Yang Mei, and Uncle Wang a little dumbfounded, and they felt their mouths go dry. That was Qin Lei, an existence known as the Marquis of Sinkhole. In this world, he was famous, an existence that made people tremble in fear. Now, he was like a ball that was sent flying again and again by Fang Qingshan. This simply subverted their worldview. The timeless arc is amazing. Seeing this scene, Jiang Mingyue could not help but applaud. Good. From the looks of it, he's only at the supreme grade right now, but he already has such great power. Although he relied on the fact that he made the first move, he was still able to suppress Qin Lei. Once he joins the sect, he'll have the sect's resources to support him. I'm afraid that even becoming a true disciple will be a piece of cake. If his cultivation improves a little more and reaches the peak of primordial chaos, I'm afraid that even Big Brother might not be able to suppress him. After knowing that Fang Qingshan was the master of the timeless arc, Jiang Mingyue decided to recommend him to the Dao sect at all costs. But that was only because of his potential. However, after witnessing Fang Qingshan's ferocious combat power, his thoughts were further strengthened. Such a person was already so amazing even though he was just an itinerant cultivator. If he had the support of the Dao sect, It would only be a matter of time before he soared into the sky. Once he matured, the Tao sect would once again have a mainstay. Sects and disciples were complementary to each other. If the disciples were strong, the sect would be strong. If the sect was strong, the disciples would be strong. Especially since this disciple was recommended by Jiang Mingyue. Jiang Mingyue will be able to gain a lot of benefits from it. Apart from those who were naturally jealous of others and couldn't bear to see others doing better than themselves, who else would be happy to do such a thing? Damn it! Damn it! All of you deserve to die. After Qin Lei defeated the Timeless Ark, he looked around and saw that the 10 teams under his command, which were originally full of talents, had almost lost half of their strength. Moreover, this loss was further increasing. After all, both Yang Mei and Uncle Wang did not stop what they were doing. If the 2 deputy captains had not used a trump card at the first moment and gathered their remaining strength to resist, they would have been slaughtered by the 2 of them. However, such a huge loss was the first time since the beginning of the world, and it was enough to make him vomit blood from the heartache. This was his force, and force was also a part of one's strength. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu, and where there was Jianghu, there would be no lack of competition. Dao sect, which was considered to be a very harmonious sect, still had competition, let alone a place like the demonic path force like the lifeless demon palace. The competition was even more intense. Originally, Qin Lei, as a senior captain, had 10 teams under his command. Basically, he was one of the strongest senior captains in the lifeless demon palace. However, success and failure came from the same person, and it was precisely because of this that the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. It was fine when he was at his peak, but once he exposed his weakness, his opponents would definitely take advantage of it. Now that his force had lost half of its strength, his competitors would definitely swarm over like sharks that had smelled blood. Losing face was a small matter, but they would definitely suppress him. Moreover, these forces were not only his force, but also the forces of the lifeless demon palace. If he lost so many for no reason, he would not be able to bear the consequences if the Hall Master held him accountable. Although the management of the lifeless demon palace was lax, it was a place where the strong were at the top and the weak were at the bottom. There was no human feelings to speak of here. If you could bring benefits, you would be nurtured. If you lost your value, it was time to be abandoned. Most importantly, at this moment, Qin Lei was already feeling an unprecedented pressure. This time, he seemed to have provoked an iron plate. If he did not handle it well, not only would his force be destroyed, he would also be in trouble. After all, a genius who possessed the timeless ark might have great potential and a strong background. But these were distant waters that could not quench the present thirst. However, it was different for Yang Mei and Uncle Wang, who were both experts of the 12th-stage primordial chaos realm. Yang Mei had great potential and valiant combat power, while Uncle Wang came from a prestigious family and was not easy to deal with either. If there was only one, he could restrain him. Relying on the 2 deputy captains, he might be able to stay. However, there were 2, and it was completely beyond his control. D*M*. At this moment, Qin Lei could not wait to eat the group of idiots who had been probing for information. If they had appeared in front of him, he would probably have lit them on fire immediately. Putting aside Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei, they had not been able to find out that there was a 12th-stage primordial chaos realm expert in the caravan. They were simply useless. However, this was not the time to discuss this. Since he could not use force to suppress others, he could only use his power to suppress others. Qin Lei immediately wanted to rely on the reputation of the lifeless demon palace to make Fang Qingshan retreat in the face of difficulties. Without the 2 of them, even Uncle Wang would be insignificant. After dealing with Uncle Wang, he would return to deal with Fang Qingshan and Qin Lei. Who exactly are you? How dare you disrupt the operation of the lifeless demon palace? Are you courting death? Hee, the lifeless demon palace? Is it very impressive? At that moment, a voice as beautiful as the bright moon was heard. Then, Jiang Mingyue, who was dressed in men's clothes, walked out gracefully. Although she only had the strength of a mid-stage primordial chaos realm expert, she was as dazzling as the sun. Instantly, she attracted everyone's attention. Second young master, why did you come out? Upon seeing Jiang Mingyue, Uncle Wang, who had been cleaning up the lifeless demon palace and cutting off Qin Lei's wings, suddenly changed his expression. Without saying a word, he appeared in front of Jiang Mingyue instantly and looked around vigilantly, afraid of any danger. All right, Uncle Wang, it's fine. Jiang Mingyue did not care about Uncle Wang's fuss and waved her hand. Chapter 1274. As the saying goes, a person of wealth would never sit under the eaves. However, Jiang Mingyue was even more confident in her ability to sense danger. Although nothing was absolute, Jiang Mingyue didn't feel any life-threatening danger from the people in front of her at the scene. Moreover, although her cultivation base might be the weakest among them, her ability to protect herself was probably above everyone else. After all, she had a group of family members and teachers who held her in their hands, afraid that she would fall and afraid that she would melt. Who are you? How arrogant. You actually dare to look down on the lifeless demon palace. Little girl, you have to know that right and wrong are caused by speaking too much, and troubles are caused by standing up for others. Don't bring trouble to yourself and the forces behind you. Otherwise, it will be too late to regret. Qin Lei squinted his eyes and said coldly. The threat in his tone was self-evident. Jiang Mingyue did not take Qin Lei's threats seriously at all. She laughed lightly. A mere void thief who doesn't even have a god-emperor force and hides here, and they're like a mouse, actually dares to talk so shamelessly. Who do you think you are? The top 100 of the myriad heavens supreme forces list? Bring trouble? What an arrogant, lifeless demon palace. It seems that you have forgotten the pain after the scar has healed. What do you mean? Qin Lei's heart skipped a beat. Normally, with Jiang Mingyue's tone, she was either a fool or full of confidence. Based on Qin Lei's judgment, she was obviously the latter. How could she look down on the lifeless demon palace like that? Qin Lei suddenly felt a little uneasy. However, he did not show it on his face. Jiang Mingyue did not answer. She took out a token. It looked ordinary, but the two words Dao Will carved on the front were extremely eye-catching. I don't know if you still recognize this thing. When he saw this command medallion, even though his heart was in turmoil, Qin Lei, who had always been calm and collected on the surface, and even wanted to use his power to suppress others, finally had a change in expression. He looked at Jiang Mingyue in shock and said loudly, Dao Will sect. You are from Dao Will sect? It seems that you still remember. Jiang Mingyue chuckled and said coldly, I let all of you off the last time, yet I never imagined that all of you would actually dare to go even further and actually rob my Dao Will school. Sure enough, if you don't get a beating, you'll tear the tiles off the roof. Looks like I'll have to properly talk to the elders when I return this time, so as to avoid any random nobody from daring to put on airs above my Dao Will school. When Qin Lei heard that, it was as if he was struck by lightning. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but no sound came out for a long time. This was because if such a thing really happened, it would cause the Dao Will sect to attack the lifeless demon palace again. If he was not killed by the Dao Will sect, no matter how great his potential was, the extermination demon lord and the others would not let him off. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei were very puzzled when they saw Qin Lei reveal such a face. It was just a token, just a symbol of status. Why did Qin Lei have to do this? Even though the Dao Will sect was stronger than the lifeless demon palace, there was no need to act like a mouse meeting a cat. Regarding this, Fang Qingshan and the others were puzzled. However, Uncle Wang and the caravan were not surprised, especially the leader of the caravan. Even though he knew that the lady he had received had an extraordinary background, he did not expect her to be from the Dao Will sect. At first, he was delighted, but then he began to regret it. If he had known earlier that she was from the Dao Will sect, he would definitely have kept the favor and not used it on something as simple as transporting goods. Good steel should be used on the blade. This was a method that could save one's life, but now he had wasted it. Really, it was too late for regrets. As for Qinlei, with his cultivation base and the backing of the lifeless demon palace, even if he encountered the top 100 forces, as long as he did not hurt their direct disciples, he would at most be afraid and take the initiative to retreat. It was absolutely impossible for him to be in such a fearful situation. The reason for this was actually traced back to the rise of the lifeless demon palace in the past. The rise of any force was actually a bloodbath, let alone a bandit force like the lifeless demon palace. Back then, when the lifeless demon palace was rising, it was really like a newborn calf that was not afraid of tigers. It was unscrupulous and unscrupulous. Therefore, it caused public anger and many forces to join forces to deal with it. Unexpectedly, although they were unscrupulous and full of evil deeds, they were more skilled and caused the invading forces to be completely annihilated. This instantly made the name of the lifeless demon palace famous. However, the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. At the same time, it attracted the attack of a god emperor. If not for the demon extermination venerable's cautiousness, the lifeless demon palace would have been completely annihilated in that battle. Even so, the lifeless demon palace also suffered heavy losses after that battle. It was only after hiding for a long time that they once again emerged. However, after appearing, a wise man submits to circumstances, and those who cannot afford to offend him all retreated to avoid him. The source of all this was the god emperor. This god emperor was none other than the Tao Will sect. One of the forces that had been annihilated in the past owed the Tao Will sect a favor, so he had asked the Tao Will sect to take revenge. At that time, Qinlei had only broken through to the primordial chaos realm. However, he had also seen the lifeless demon palace flee like rats under the power of the god emperor. It was precisely because of this that he naturally knew how powerful the Tao Will sect was. This had almost become a shadow and nightmare in his heart. Therefore, he had revealed such an expression. However, he was not a simple person to be able to grow to where he was today. Very soon, he came to a realization. Once bitten, twice shy. The Tao Will sect had indeed brought great fear to the lifeless demon palace. However, it was just a disciple of the Tao Will sect at the mid-stage primordial chaos realm. So what if there was an old path protector at the 12th stage primordial chaos realm? If he wanted to leave, it would definitely not be a problem. On the contrary, if he captured Jiang Mingyue, he would definitely be greatly rewarded once he returned to the headquarters. Although the lifeless demon palace did not dare to take revenge on the Tao Will sect in the past, it was obvious that they hated the Tao Will sect a lot. However, it was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge even after 10 years. However, once there was an opportunity, he would definitely not let it go. At the thought of this, a trace of excitement flashed in Qinlei's eyes. Obviously, he was thinking about the rich rewards. Of course, the premise was that he had to capture them and not let any of them escape. Otherwise, once the Tao Will sect intervened, he would be in trouble. At that time, Demon Venerate Extermination might directly hand him over to quench the Tao Will sect's anger. Hold the two of them. Kill. At this moment, he had already given up on Fang Qingshan. However, he let the two deputy captains hold Fang Qingshan, Yang Mei, and the rest while he went straight for Jiang Mingyue. Chapter 1275. Gate of Devouring, Suppress. If he wanted to deal with Jiang Mingyue, he first had to get rid of Uncle Wang, who was protecting her. Uncle Wang was not easy to deal with. He had no choice but to go all out. Therefore, Qinlei took out his special treasure, the Gate of Devouring, as soon as he made his move. This item was not simple. Although it was also a level 1 treasure, it was high level 1, or even half a step to the extreme level. It was far above the treasured saber in Uncle Wang's hand. It was made from the stomach of a Kuanpeng that had gone through the Deva Decay and entered the immortal realm, as well as a disaster black hole in the boundless void, along with other natural treasures. And because it was compatible with the great path that he cultivated, its power was multiplied. The item was as black as ink, and there were mysterious runes on it. As it moved, it was like a living thing. The inside of the door was like a black hole that ended in ruins. A huge Kuanping was swimming in it, swallowing everything. Be it living creatures, treasures, laws, or the world, there seemed to be nothing that it could not swallow. Miss, be careful. Humph, I will use my blood to slaughter the world. Seeing Qin Lei pouncing towards Jiang Mingwei and using a killing move from the start, Uncle Wang's eyes immediately turned red. He was afraid that Jiang Mingwei would be hurt by the aftermath of their fight. Without saying anything, he waved his hand and pushed Jiang Mingwei far away. Then, he directly used a forbidden move. With one slash, a terrifying saber will was transmitted. This was not a law, but an extreme killing saber will. At the same time, the essence and blood in Uncle Wang's body began to boil. Vitality began to flow out crazily. His primordial spirit seemed to be heavily injured. Even his luck and lifespan were transformed into the saber through some mysterious power. It was a bit similar to the demonic method of blood sacrifice. However, the demonic method of blood sacrifice was to sacrifice the people, all living things, external objects, and others. Once it was used, it would be a massacre, and the whole world would be its enemy. However, the blood sacrifice that Uncle Wang performed was to sacrifice himself. Fortunately, although it was a blood sacrifice, it only consumed essence, qi, and spirit, and a little more luck and lifespan. Although this method was also a forbidden method, it only consumed one's potential. The other drawbacks were that he would not be able to use martial arts for a long period of time, and his cultivation would be greatly reduced. However, as long as he made up for it, he would not be able to regain it. As for potential, if Uncle Wang still had potential, he wouldn't have become Jiang Mingyue's guardian. Therefore, even though Jiang Mingyue was a little worried, she was only worried. If Uncle Wang wants to fight with his life, then she will reveal her trump card. Moreover, as Uncle Wang slashed out with his saber, the entire void seemed to be dyed blood red. The thick stench of blood was nauseating, and those who didn't know better would think that they had arrived at a sea of blood. That blade light was extremely fast, extremely condensed, and extremely frightening. When the blade was slashed out, it seemed as though it had torn a scar in the void. That scar was gray in color, as though it had been left behind in the void for a long time. The aura it emitted was extremely frightening. Although the devouring gate was of a higher grade, it faintly felt as though it had been slashed away. Trapped. Right at this moment, Qin Lei suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a word. The devouring gate, which was originally shaking and on the verge of collapse, suddenly shone brightly. With lightning speed, it moved towards Uncle Wang and swallowed him. At this moment, Uncle Wang had just used up his old strength and hadn't gathered any new strength. He was caught off guard. However, although he was trapped within the devouring gate, he didn't panic in the face of danger. The treasured saber in his hand and the will in his heart surged. Violent, destructive power and extreme, killing power swept out. Crack! The frightening power caused the devouring gate to shake on the spot. It was as though the 5 elements mountain, without the talisman of the 6 runes, could be flipped over by the Monkey King at any time. However, it was obvious that Uncle Wang had been successfully restrained. The time he had to break free was enough for Qin Lei to complete his task. After all, he wasn't far from Jiang Mingwei, and there was no longer a guardian around Jiang Mingwei who could contend against him. As though he had discovered that victory was within his grasp, Qin Lei's face couldn't help but reveal a hideous smile. However, at this moment, Jiang Mingyue seemed as though she didn't see Qin Lei at all. She also seemed as though she didn't feel that she was only half a step away from the cliff. She was still as calm as before. After all, she wasn't completely powerless. In terms of life-saving methods, she didn't lack. As long as she didn't even have the time to use her trump card, even an immortal expert wouldn't be able to take her down easily. Seeing that Qin Lei was about to attack Jiang Mingwei, Uncle Wang, who had just escaped from the devouring gate, instantly became furious. He was both regretful and angry. He naturally regretted that he didn't protect Jiang Mingwei well, and his anger was naturally directed towards Qinlei. However, distant water couldn't quench present thirst. He could only watch helplessly. Jiang Mingwei had already taken out a talisman in her hand. It seemed as though she was ready to crush it at any time. However, she didn't need it anymore. Buzz. In the next moment, a lotus platform bloomed on top of Jiang Mingwei's head. The flower bloomed into 24 grades, broad and bright. A red light that was comparable to the blood light that Uncle Wong released when he used his secret technique exploded. It made the lifeless demon palace, or rather, the people with deep karma, instantly feel as though a great disaster was about to befall them. However, these two types of red were slightly different. Uncle Wong's red was blood red, scarlet red. However, the red of the lotus platform was fiery red. Yes, one side was blood, and the other was fire. In the void, there was a vague sound of Tao. It seemed as though it could burn the heaven and earth and burn away all karma. 24 grades red karmic fire lotus. Rank 1 top quality defensive treasure. Qinlei's hand, which was originally going to grab Jiang Mingwei, landed on the red karmic fire lotus. Not only did he not break the defense of this treasure and fulfill his wish, instead, it was like an ordinary person's hand grabbing acid. It made a sizzling sound, and he suddenly retracted his hand. He couldn't wait to extinguish the flame that was spreading over. Karmic fire. When he came back to his senses and wanted to make a move, Fang Qingshan's voice already rang beside his ear. Taoist, please wait. At the same time, Uncle Wong also flew over at his fastest speed and used his body to block in front of Jiang Mingwei. Dang! A crisp sound of the morning bell and evening drum rang out. Qinlei, who was originally going to continue making a move, immediately stopped. Then, he saw a huge lightning pillar descending from the sky. It brought with it a towering aura of evil, as well as a Tao rhythm that could split heaven and earth. Dutian thunder. At the same time, there was also a snow-white saber light descending. Although it wasn't as majestic as the Dutian thunder, it was even more overbearing than the saber technique. It was like an unconventional sword, but it was even more difficult to defend against. Facing these two attacks, one good and one evil, one hard and one soft, one bright and one dark, Qinlei was also very helpless. He could only choose to retreat. His body didn't advance, but retreated instead. He no longer wanted to capture Jiang Mingwei. Chapter 1276. Sigh, what a pity. Qinlei sighed in his heart. Seeing Uncle Wong and Fang Qingshan react, he knew that his wishful thinking was in vain. Now he had to think about how to leave this place smoothly and how to deal with the suppression of competitors and the accountability of the sect when he returned to the lifeless demon palace. Damn it, you can't even handle such a small matter. You're all useless. I'll settle the score with you when I return. Compared to the losses this time and the troubles when he returned, Qinlei was most furious about the people under his command who were scouting for information. As the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. In order to catch a big fish, in order to earn the most benefits, in order to minimize losses, in order not to kick an iron plate, as the saying went, every team from the lifeless demon palace would scout for information before they took action. Who could be touched? Who could not be provoked? Who could be paid? Who was not worth fighting, etc. Because of this, the lifeless demon palace developed more and more smoothly and became one of the top 10 void bandits. However, this time, they were always walking by the river, and their shoes were wet. First of all, Jiang Mingwei, a disciple from the Dao sect, was not detected in the caravan. Uncle Wong, a primordial chaos stage 12 expert, did not mention her. Secondly, Yang Mei, who was not inferior to Uncle Wong and even better than him, and Fang Qingshan, the master of the timeless arc, had appeared at the place of ambush. All these could be attributed to the fact that man proposes but God disposes. However, when he had taken action, he had asked the two deputy captains to restrain Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei. It was just to restrain them, not to let them win. He had not expected that such a simple task would not be completed. They were simply useless. If Fang Qingshan had not interfered, he would have succeeded. Although the loss was a little big, Jiang Mingyue had interfered and Uncle Wang had held back. After dealing with Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei, they would still be fish on the chopping board. If he could get rid of all the people present and capture Jiang Mingyue, then bring her back to the sect, not to mention the loss, the sect would even reward him generously. Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that even without Fang Qingshan, it was impossible for him to defeat Jiang Mingyue. At most, he would make her waste one of her trump cards. Now that he had failed at the last step, it would be difficult to return. Although his life wouldn't be in danger with his natural talent and contributions, he couldn't escape punishment. Qin Lei was simply angered to the point he almost choked to death from a mouthful of old blood. However, if he looked back, he would realize that it was not that the two vice captains did not try their best, but that they had no other choice. Although Fang Qingshan had left, there were also the World Tree, Clone, and Mosquito Dowrin. Although they weren't as good as Fang Qingshan with the Timeless Arc, they had no problem restraining the vice captain. However, now was not the time to consider this. Right now, the most important thing was how to escape unscathed. Humph! The mountains and rivers will meet again. Don't ever fall into my hands. Otherwise, I will let you know that the lifeless demon palace isn't a place that just anyone can provoke. Seeing that things couldn't go against his will, Qin Lei could only sigh and give up on capturing Jiang Mingyue, forcing Uncle Wang, taking care of the merchant team, then turning around and punishing Fang Qingshan and Fang Qingshan. However, although he had lost, he still had to leave some harsh word behind. Of course, this wasn't towards Jiang Mingyue, but towards Fang Qingshan and Fang Qingshan. Jiang Mingyue was from the Dao Yi sect. He couldn't afford to offend her, and he didn't dare to offend her. However, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei were obviously not on the same side as them. Although the two of them looked extraordinary, they were obviously not disciples of some famous sect. It wouldn't be a problem for the lifeless demon palace to take care of such people. After leaving some harsh words behind, Qin Lei turned around and seemed like he was going to escape. The mountains and rivers will meet again. You still want to wait for the mountains and rivers to meet again? Stay here today. Fang Qingshan laughed coldly. If he didn't kill the snake, he would be the one to blame. Fang Qingshan had always adhered to the principle that if he could eliminate the root of the problem, he would never allow the tiger to return to the mountain. Didn't you see that many villains were exhausted to death by the protagonist just like that? Back then, if Hua Tiandu hadn't given Fang Han a 10-year chance and killed him decisively, there wouldn't have been anything like this. Therefore, seeing that Qin Lei actually wanted to leave, how could Fang Qingshan let him go? Not to mention other things, killing and arson was a golden belt, and repairing bridges and roads left no corpses behind. Just this alone was enough for him to not let him go. Therefore, he immediately rode the Timeless Arc and charged over. Uncle Wang, on the other hand, didn't move. He still stood beside Jiang Mingyue, afraid that Qin Lei would create a diversion. He didn't want to experience the feeling of his heart pounding again. However, although he had predicted Qin Lei's plan, he had calculated the wrong target. At this moment, Yang Mei, Mosquito Dowrin, the clone of the World Tree, and the people from the lifeless demon palace were restraining each other. Uncle Wang protected Jiang Mingyue. Qin Lei seemed to be escaping, and Fang Qingshan chased after him with the Timeless Arkansas. Other than that, the merchant group, which was supposed to be the main character this time, stayed out of it and became a spectator. Unfortunately, disaster fell from the sky. Kill. Seeing that Qin Lei was about to be caught up by Fang Qingshan, Qin Lei seemed to feel that he couldn't escape, so he turned around and started fighting again. This time, he drew his bow from both sides at the same time. However, fighting was fighting. He wasn't fighting with the Timeless Arc behind him, nor was he attacking Jiang Mingyue and Uncle Wang. Instead, he wanted to capture the merchant group in one fell swoop. Although taking down the merchant group seemed to be of no use. However, if one thought about it carefully, they would understand that this was the root of everything. Just like how if he captured Jiang Mingyue, he would restrict Uncle Wang. If he took down the merchant group, he would naturally make Jiang Mingwei hesitate in taking action. If Jiang Mingwei hesitated in taking action, how could the others overturn the heavens? After all, she was everyone's backbone. Hence, he used a killing move right from the start. Black hole, another black hole. A surge of devouring power suddenly erupted. In an instant, the originally not bright, boundless void suddenly darkened, as if it had entered an eternal night. No matter how much they thought about it, no one would have thought that at this time, Qinlei would actually attack the seemingly harmless merchant group. Naturally, no one was prepared at all. Most of the merchant group's void spaceships and people were devoured and suppressed by him. Not good. At this time, Jiang Mingyue's expression, which had always been full of wisdom, finally changed. A wise man would always make a mistake, and a fool would always make a mistake. Besieging Wei to save Zhao. She never would have thought that Qinlei would actually use such a move. They all thought that Qinlei was going to escape, but they didn't think that he would actually turn around and attack. Or even if he turned around and attacked, it would be directed at Jiang Mingwei. But he completely ignored the merchant group. Actually, it wasn't that Qinlei didn't want to escape, but it was very easy for him to leave. However, it was easy for him to leave, but it wasn't easy for the forces under his command to leave. As for abandoning his subordinates and escaping, forget about other things. Just the loss alone was something he couldn't bear. Chapter 1277. A good man needed 3 helpers, and a fence needed 3 stakes. Now, although he had suffered heavy losses, he still had at least 40% of his forces. If he were to escape alone, he would really become a commander without an army. The reason why Team Taodai could be the best among all the teams was not only because of Qinlei's potential and strength, but also because of the 10 teams. If these 10 teams were all annihilated, his strength would be greatly reduced. If he wanted to make a comeback, he would need to spend a lot of effort. He might even be unable to recover from this setback. After all, his competitors would not sympathize with him. On the contrary, they would try their best to suppress him. It was already impossible to take down Jiang Mingwei, not to mention Fang Qingshan, Yang Mei, and Uncle Wang. He had to pick the weakest ones. The only thing that he could suppress quickly was the caravan. Moreover, at this moment, attacking the merchant caravan was catching them off guard. No one would have thought that this would happen. Most importantly, taking down the caravan was indeed Jiang Mingyue's weakness. After all, she was from Dao Yi sect. Dao Yi sect valued their promises the most. She had promised to protect the caravan. If something went wrong, it would not only be a simple matter of losing face, but it might also affect her cultivation. Therefore, as long as the caravan was taken down, she and her subordinates could leave safely. Who would have thought that someone from the lifeless demon palace would do such a thing? This is really an eye-opener for me. Jiang Mingwei sneered. Hee, I also never thought that the disciples of Dao Yi sect would appear in this poor and remote place, pretending to be weak to eat the strong. Qinlei did not care about Jiang Mingyue's mockery at all. After all, they were bandits. Why would they need a reputation? Wasn't it normal to use despicable methods? Moreover, no matter if it was a black or white cat, it was a good cat if it could catch a mouse. Needless to say, it could save one's life. Not to mention bandits. Even the disciples of famous sects would not be immune. What do you want to do? Jiang Mingyue seemed to have understood that saying these words to Qinlei was simply playing the lute to a cow. She immediately didn't want to talk any more nonsense with him and asked straightforwardly. It's very simple. This time, I've lost so many brothers. You have to compensate us for our losses. Also, you have to let us go. You're not allowed to chase after us. When we reach a safe place, I will naturally let them go. Qinlei said unhurriedly. This time, he was the one who had the initiative to speak. Compensation for my losses? Let you go? Not allowed to follow. We'll release him when we reach a safe place. Jiang Mingyue couldn't help but laugh out of anger. This was really Zhu Beiji's way of putting the blame on others. It was obvious that they had failed in their robbery and suffered heavy losses, but they actually wanted the robbed to compensate for their losses. This was simply a huge joke. Besides, it was not a problem to let them go, but they were not allowed to follow them and had to wait until they reached a safe place before letting them go. This was the biggest joke in the world, not to mention the fact that they were thieves with no credibility. Even ordinary enemies wouldn't agree to such an exchange. Do you think that's possible? Why not? Qin Lei said calmly. Then, he seemed to understand what Jiang Mingyue meant. He thought for a while and said, "If you don't believe me, at most, I will make an oath." How about that? How about that? Oath? If oaths covered everything, everything would be useful. In the whole heavens, there wouldn't be such things. Jiang Mingyue couldn't help but roll her eyes. Oaths were indeed trustworthy, but it was better to have no books than to have no books. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei had already made an oath. After leaving the Desolation World, they would not actively or passively reveal any information about Pan Gu's chaotic world. But why would the will of the Great Way still hide the world and destroy the wormhole in Hongjun? Wasn't it because oaths were not safe? Not to mention that the heavens were vast. There were many secret methods, physiques, treasures, and magical powers that could eliminate oaths. Just finding loopholes in oaths was enough to give people a headache. For example, Qin Lei said that he would release the caravan when he reached a safe place. He could indeed do it according to the oath. But the problem was, where was the safe place? Was it the lifeless demon palace? If it was, what was the use even if he released them? Then what do you think we should do? Qin Lei shrugged his shoulders and kicked the ball back to him. Fang Zheng had the initiative now, so he wasn't anxious at all. Release the caravan. I swear in the name of the Tao, we'll sect to let you guys go. Jiang Mingyue thought for a while and said in a deep voice. Hearing Jiang Mingyue swear in the name of the Tao, we'll sect, Qin Lei's eyes lit up. Although they were enemies and both of them wished to take each other down, Qin Lei was still very convinced of the Tao will sect's reputation. The key was that there was nothing he could do even if he wasn't convinced. The other party wouldn't even be willing to his suggestion. As for a life and death struggle, it was better to live than to die. Who would be willing to die if they could live well? What about them? After thinking for a while, Qin Lei pointed at Fang Qingshan and the others. He hadn't forgotten that it was precisely this group of people that caused his operation to fail at the last moment. Otherwise, even if he had Jiang Mingyue and Uncle Wang with him, he would at most return empty-handed, and he wouldn't suffer such heavy losses. As long as you let them go, we can also swear. Fang Qingshan said directly. What about compensation? Hearing that, Qin Lei nodded and didn't say anything. But after a while, Jiang Mingyue saw that he didn't let them go and didn't leave. She was immediately puzzled. Just when she was about to speak, Qin Lei said somewhat impatiently, "Compensation?" Jiang Mingyue and Fang Qingshan were instantly shocked. They didn't expect that Qin Lei actually wanted them to compensate. He simply didn't know what he was talking about. Either do according to what we said earlier, or we fight to the death. Jiang Mingyue said coldly, "Aren't you afraid that not fulfilling your promise will affect your cultivation?" Qin Lei was stunned for a moment and asked back, What's the point of worrying about wrinkling a pool of spring water?" Jiang Mingyue retorted, "All right, since that's the case, let's do it this way." Qin Lei choked for a moment and felt that this might be the best solution at the moment. He immediately nodded his head, but he still threatened, "I hope you guys keep your words and don't go back on your words. Otherwise, this is also what I want to say to you." Jiang Mingyue sneered. She, Yang Mei, Fang Qingshan, and the others swore the oath one after another. Qin Lei also released the caravan as promised. Then, he led his subordinates and retreated cautiously. Facing the retreat of Qin Lei and the others, Fang Qingshan and Jiang Mingyue didn't care. It was impossible for Jiang Mingyue to joke around with the reputation of Dao Yi sect. And if it was just any one of them, if they chased after them alone, they would most likely return without any achievement. They might even fall into Qin Lei's trap and suffer heavy losses. All right, we can't stay in this troublesome place for long. Let's go. Seeing Qin Lei and the others disappear, Jiang Mingyue and the others didn't stay for long and immediately continued to advance according to the established route. Chapter 1278. Phew. This time, it's all thanks to young Master Jiang. Otherwise, not only would our goods have been robbed, but we would also have been completely wiped out. If that had happened, the entire family would have fallen. I can't thank you enough. If there's anything you need from us in the future, just send us a message and we'll do our best. In a spaceship at the center of the caravan, Fang Qingshan, Yang Mei, Jiang Mingyue, and Uncle Wang sat together. A middle-aged man with a big belly and a luxurious suit stood in front of them. He looked fearful and grateful as he spoke to Jiang Mingyue. This person was none other than the leader of this caravan and one of the candidates for the position of clan leader, Jin Fuguei. Escorting a large amount of goods in the boundless void was like constantly emitting a fishy smell to attract sharks. Without sufficient strength, one would definitely be courting death. This time, Jin Fuguei was willing to take such a huge risk because he would definitely become the only candidate for the position of clan leader if he completed this mission. Fortune came from danger. Moreover, he had Jiang Mingyue as his trump card. Indeed, things did not go beyond his expectations. Although the process was dangerous, the outcome was satisfactory. Although he had initially regretted it when he found out that Jiang Mingyue was from the Daoul sect, he immediately understood. A man's heart was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Although he was always at her beck and call, it was only a small favor. It was not enough for Jiang Mingyue to promise him a favor. If he had pushed his luck, not only would he not have such a good situation today, but he would also offend Jiang Mingyue. Forget it. If it wasn't for Brother Jin, I'm afraid I would have missed out on Junior Brother this time. Everything is destined. There's no need to say anything else. Jiang Mingyue waved her hand in a good mood. This time, everyone was indeed happy. Jin Fuguei had successfully completed his mission. As long as he returned to the family, he could become clan leader. Jiang Mingyue had recruited a genius disciple for the sect, and Fang Qingshan had also joined a large sect as he wished. On the other hand, Yang Mei did not seem to have received any breakthrough benefits. After all, Jiang Mingyue only had one recommendation. After recommending Fang Qingshan, there was no more. Of course, if she was willing to help, the Jiang family could have gotten another recommendation with their influence in the Daoul sect, but it was completely unnecessary. After all, this quota was extremely precious. Even the direct disciples of their clans would not be given to them unless they were true geniuses. Although Yang Mei's talent was extraordinary and her cultivation was not weak, such an existence could only be said to be inferior to Yang Mei. He was a genius, and not an ordinary genius, but not a peerless genius. In comparison, Fang Qingshan, the master of the timeless arc, was a far cry. Therefore, it was not enough for Jiang Mingyue to spend so much effort to find another place for him. As for this time's help, she could use other methods to make up for it. But if he didn't get the benefits he wanted from Jiang Mingyue, he still had Fang Qingshan, a peach in return for a plum. Now was the time to pay back. Back then, during the desolation case, why did Yang Mei stubbornly stand on Fang Qingshan's side and fight against Hong Jun? Besides the fact that Hong Jun was their common enemy, he also invested in Fang Qingshan in advance because of his potential. Now is the time to reap the rewards. With Fang Qingshan as the master of the timeless arc and Jiang Mingyue's recommendation, even if he had just joined the Daoul sect and dared not hope to become a direct disciple, he would at least become an inner disciple. As long as one was an inner disciple, he or she would be given a recommendation. Because he had just joined the sect, this recommendation might not be effective immediately. After all, he was still in the probation period, let alone recommending others. But after the probation period, this recommendation would be effective. At that time, he would recommend Yang Mei. Not to mention becoming an inner disciple, he would definitely become an outer disciple. And with Yang Mei's current cultivation base, breaking through to the immortal realm was just around the corner. Becoming an outer disciple, breaking through to the immortal realm, and becoming an inner disciple was just a matter of time. Therefore, Yang Mei had also joined the Daoul sect as he wished. Wasn't this a happy ending? Like the Eternal Ascension sect, the Daoul sect was also divided into outer, inner, and direct disciples. It was very simple to become an outer disciple. There were 3 conditions. First of all, he had to have a clean background. In other words, he wasn't someone from an opposing faction, a spy from another sect, a person who didn't keep his word, or a lawless murderer who slaughtered the innocent. Second was potential, which was talent. One had to be outstanding in one or more aspects, or have a special physique, root bone, bloodline, and so on. One had to at least have the foundation to cultivate to the 12th level of the primordial chaos realm. Otherwise, one would not be considered at all. Finally, one's cultivation base had to be at the primordial chaos realm. This was the basic requirement. If one could not even meet this requirement, one could still become an inner disciple of the Tao, sect, if one's talent was really good. They would be given some time to break through and become an inner disciple. If not, they would leave. There were 3 ways to become an inner disciple. First, which was also the most conventional way, was to join the Tao, sect, and become an outer disciple. Then, after cultivating hard and reaching the immortal realm, one could apply and be inspected by the sect. First, one had to be talented like Jiang Mingyue and Fang Qingshan and become an inner disciple the moment they entered the sect. Of course, one had to be at the primordial chaos realm. Otherwise, one could only become an inner disciple. Finally, one had to be obtained through contribution and favors. The most important thing was contribution. This was because the position one obtained through favors could only be obtained after the person who owed you made contributions. Of course, the prerequisite was that one's cultivation base was up to standard and talent was extraordinary. Otherwise, favors would not work. As for becoming a direct disciple, one's cultivation base was not required to break through to the God Emperor realm. However, it would not be easy. First, one had to be at the immortal realm. Not the early stage immortal realm, but at least the late stage immortal realm. This was a hard target. Second, an ordinary late stage immortal realm expert was completely useless. One had to be at least a title immortal. Next, it was contribution. One had to make outstanding contributions to the sect. This was because a direct disciple could represent the Tao, sect, in a certain aspect. Moreover, the sect leader and the elders with real power were all chosen from the direct disciples. Their status was even higher than that of ordinary elders. One had to at least break through to the God Emperor realm to become an elder of the Tao sect. This was evident. If a sect was like a big tree, the patriarch, grand supreme elder, and sect leader were the trunk, and the outer disciples, inner disciples, and various deacons are the branches and leaves, then the direct disciples and elders were the roots. It was not a problem to lack branches and leaves, but it was a big problem to lack roots. Chapter 1279. In the following period of time, Jiang Mingyue and Uncle Wang explained to Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei about the infinite void, the various basic situations of the various worlds in the universe, and even secrets, as well as various things to take note of in the Tao sect. Of course, at the same time, the caravan and the spaceship were still hurrying on their journey, passing through the void. As they hurried on their journey, their destination, the Shang chaotic world where Jean Fugue's family was located, was getting closer and closer. One day, when Jiang Mingyue, Fang Qingshan, and the rest were chatting happily, they suddenly felt a slight tremor from the spaceship, which seemed to be slowing down gradually. Then, they saw Jean Fugue running over happily and telling them that they were about to reach their destination, the Shang chaotic world. "We're finally here." Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief at the same time. Ever since they were born, they had never experienced such a thing. It was simply unimaginable that they had spent more than 100 years on the ship while hurrying on their journey. During this process, he continuously learned about the information about the boundless void and the various worlds that he wanted to know the most from Jiang Mingyue. Although it was said that cultivating there was not the same as cultivating, it was his first time experiencing it after all, and he was not used to it. As for what they learned from the Poison Marquis and the others, it was not worth mentioning compared to what Jiang Mingyue and the others had learned. This was the difference between a large sect and an ordinary force. Although the lifeless demon palace was not bad, it was worlds apart from the Daoul sect. Moreover, this chaotic world was originally their goal. The Shang chaotic world. Yes, they had already arrived at a place called the Shang chaotic world. Unlike the Pan-Gu chaotic world, which was named after Pan-Gu, the most powerful person in history, the Shang chaotic world was not the name of the most powerful person, but the meaning of business. Yes, this was a chaotic world that was famous for its business. The commerce here was extremely developed. It was said that as long as you could think of something, there was nothing you couldn't buy. There were countless auction houses of varying reputations, because as long as a clan had a bit of power, they would open an auction house. This had practically become a tradition, a habit. Jean Fugue's clan was a medium-sized clan in the merchant chaos world, and they also had an auction house called the Guangjin Auction House. Countless treasures of heaven and earth from hundreds of chaos worlds were gathered here. In terms of spiritual treasures, there were level 1 spiritual treasures, level 2 spiritual treasures, and even level 3 spiritual treasures. In terms of cultivation techniques, there were primordial chaos level, immortal level, and even God Emperor level. In terms of natural treasures, there were those that could aid in cultivation, help in breaking through bottlenecks, develop one's talent, suppress inner demons, and so on. Therefore, even in the entire heavens, the Shang chaotic world was very famous, and its ranking was not low. It was ranked 999th, just within the top 1,000. Among the nearby chaotic worlds, it was considered to be one of the best, even unique existences. The city thrived on the Dao. In other words, road traffic played a decisive role in the prosperity of a city. If one wanted to be rich, one had to build roads first. Otherwise, no matter how many good things there were, it would be inconvenient to travel, and it would not develop. The reason why the Shang chaotic world's commerce was so developed was that there were not only the most complete star map coordinates of the nearby void, but also 10 wormholes. These wormholes were not ordinary wormholes, but wormholes that could connect to more distant chaos worlds. It was precisely because of this that the Shang chaotic world could develop. Of course, the other aspect was strength. One could imagine the value of a wormhole that could connect to such a long distance. Even a God Emperor would be tempted, let alone 10. An innocent man would get into trouble because of his wealth. If they did not have strength, how could they protect it? Moreover, since it was said that as long as you could think of something, there was nothing you couldn't buy, it was obvious that there were countless rare treasures. The world was so big, and there was no lack of people who took risks out of desperation. How could there be a lack of people who caused trouble and robbed? However, ever since the Shang chaotic world developed, its reputation grew day by day. It was not that there were no people who took advantage of the situation, but those who caused trouble never returned. It was said that the most famous one was that 300,000 years ago, someone in the Shang chaotic world obtained a peerless divine item that could help a God Emperor break through from a relic. Originally, no matter who obtained such an item, they would keep it tightly to themselves. Unfortunately, there was no impenetrable wall in the world. In the end, the news could not be kept secret, and once it was leaked, it immediately caused an unprecedented storm. In the end, the entire Shang chaotic world had no choice but to hold an auction together. Even the Daoul sect moved upon hearing the news. After all, at that time, their patriarch had already passed away, and they needed a God Emperor to suppress it. How could they miss such an item? Fortunately, the Daoul sect did not take it by force, but was prepared to participate in the auction. However, there were too few existences like them. After all, even if the Daoul sect could bid for it, they would have to go bankrupt, let alone others who did not have the funds to do so. Since they could not bid for it, they naturally had to snatch it. Moreover, it was not just 1 or 2 people, there were at least 10 peak God Emperors who took action to snatch the divine item. However, the final result was shocking. There were no God Emperors in the Shang chaotic world, and there were pitifully few peak God Emperors. This was also the reason why these God Emperors dared to openly snatch it when everyone looked down on them in the beginning. However, It was such a place that all the peak god emperors and hundreds of god emperors who took advantage of the situation were directly defeated and buried here. But what they relied on was money. They spent countless resources and used the chaotic world as the foundation to set up a peerless formation, which directly killed 10 peak god emperors. Moreover, after killing these god emperors who snatched the item, not only did they not vent their anger, they even took out a huge amount of money to hire a famous assassin organization in the myriad heavens and realms, the Slaughter Tower, to uproot the forces behind them. There was nothing better than killing the chicken to warn the monkey. After that, no one dared to ignore the Shang chaotic world anymore. Even if they did not have a peak force, no one dared to take it by force. Even the top 500 and even the top 300 forces on the sovereign list were secretive about the Shang chaotic world. Fortunately, they were borrowing external forces, and god emperors could still use resources, but god emperors definitely could not rely on resources. Otherwise, the ranking of the merchant chaotic world would not only be 999, but at least the top 500. Chapter 1280. In the Shang primal chaos world, there were no sects, only clans, auction houses, and merchant companies. Among them, the strongest were the 5 great auction houses, occupying the north, south, east, west, and center. They were respectively the 100 Rivers Auction House under the banner of Dongfang Clan, the Cornucopia Auction House under the banner of Nangong Clan, the Money Tree Auction House under the banner of Shiman Clan, the Wealth Enriching Auction House under the banner of Beitang Clan, and the Supreme Auction House under the banner of Shang Clan. Among them, Shang Clan was the strongest. This could be seen from the fact that they were named after Shang. Their auction house was called Supreme Auction House, and they occupied the center of the Shang primal chaos world, the most prosperous and resource-rich area. As the saying goes, only tools and names could not be faked. Shang Clan was able to use the world's name as their family name. The reason for this actually had to be traced back to 300,000 years ago. It was a major event that shook the heavens. Back then, the people who obtained the divine item that could help divine emperors break through to God Emperor were from Shang Clan. Originally, Shang Clan should have kept such a good thing for themselves, for the divine emperor ancestors of the clan to use it to break through to God Emperor. Once an emperor god appeared in a clan, that clan would be able to achieve meteoric success immediately. As the saying goes, when a man achieves Tao, even his chickens and dogs rise to heaven. Unfortunately, even though Shang Clan was good, it was only good. Even though they had peak god emperor ancestors. Even with divine medicine, it was not possible to break through in a short time. If the ruler was not secretive, he would lose his subject. If the subject was not secretive, he would lose his chastity. In the end, they did not keep it a secret, causing the news to leak. If they could help their ancestor break through to God Emperor in the shortest time possible, they might have taken the risk. Unfortunately, this was wishful thinking. How could the breakthrough of a God Emperor be so simple? Even with the help of godly medicine, it was still the same. Firstly, even if there was a divine medicine, it would still take time to digest it. It was not like instant enlightenment, where the conditions were right. That was not divine medicine. It was like having one's wish come true. Moreover, divine medicine was only a supplementary effect. Whether it worked depended on one and heaven's will. It only increased the chances. If the news was not leaked, they could naturally digest it slowly. Even if they failed, it was fine. Unfortunately, now that the news was leaked, they still dared to monopolize it, risking the world's condemnation. If they succeeded in a short time, before everyone came, it would be fine, but if they failed, they would face a calamity instantly. Moreover, no one would give them a chance to fail, because it was better to be safe than sorry. What if he succeeded? Therefore, if they dared to take the risk out of desperation, not to mention the people from other worlds, even the people from their own world would not let them go. After all, if a God Emperor appeared in Shang Clan, everyone in the entire Shang chaotic world would have to bow down to them. The entire world would really become Shang Clan's private land. Fortunately, at that time, the Shang Clan leader was a bold person. He endured the pain and made a prompt decision to unite all the superclans in the entire Shan Chaos world, north, south, east, and west, and did that shocking thing. First, as a precaution, they spent nearly half of their wealth to set up a peerless grand formation that used their own primal chaos world as its foundation. Then, he faced the all heavens and auctioned the divine medicine. In order to prepare for a rainy day, they had killed more than 10 powerful factions that were far more powerful than the lifeless demon palace. Using this prestige, the Shan clan rose to the top. The Shan chaotic world was also flourishing and flourishing. Most of the time, rare treasures that could not be found in the central chaos world could be found here. And the so-called central chaos world was where the Tao sect used to be. It was one of the top 100 worlds in all heavens and realms. It was precisely because of this that Jiang Mingyue came all the way here. In addition to seeing the chaotic world of Shang in the desolate land and increasing her knowledge, she also deduced that there were treasures of heaven and earth that she needed here. She had a top-notch physique, the danger physique. However, regardless of bloodline, physique, or root bone, they all needed to be awakened and transformed continuously. It cannot be done once and for all. However, to awaken such a top-notch physique, other than transforming as one's cultivation level increased, there was another shortcut, which required the help of rare treasures. However, these things were not only precious, but also very difficult to find. Even with the foundation of the Tao sect, they did not have them. It was not that the foundation of the Tao sect was poor, but because the danger physique was slightly biased, they naturally did not have specialized resources. Moreover, even if the sect had it, it was not something that could be used as one wished. You could not do whatever you wanted just because you were talented. Without rules, nothing could be accomplished. At most, it was tilted. It was absolutely impossible to reap without sowing. If you wanted to get it, you had to exchange it with contribution points. Compared to the sect contribution points, it was naturally easier for the children of big families to buy things with money. After all, in addition to completing the sect's missions, the sect's contribution points could only be obtained by making great contributions to the sect. However, no matter what, it was not easy to do, and it required a lot of time and experience. Of course, if one wanted to buy such good things, especially at the auction house, it would be wishful thinking if one did not have enough wealth. Therefore, money was not omnipotent, but it was impossible to not have money. Therefore, of the 4 essential elements of cultivation, wealth, companionship, method, and place, wealth ranked first. Putting these aside, according to reason, recommending Fang Qingshan, the master of the timeless arc, to enter the sect was a top priority. After all, if other big sects found out, it would cause unnecessary trouble. However, Jiang Mingyue herself needed to buy treasures to awaken the danger physique. Besides, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei had never traveled this long way before. For a moment, they were a little tired. Moreover, they had already confirmed that they would join the Tao sect, so there was no need to rush. Seeing such an interesting place like the merchant chaotic world, they naturally had to take a good look. Therefore, after some discussion, everyone felt that there was no need to rush back to the sect. Since they were already there, it would not make sense to leave without taking a look. Moreover, it would not take much time. When they alighted from the void spaceship, the first thing that came into view was a bustling scene. On the dock, all kinds of void spaceships could be said to be endless. Some were loading, some were unloading, and the shouts were rising and falling. At the same time, the patrolling team also surprised Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei because they were all existences at the primordial chaos level. Although they were only early-stage primordial chaos, it was enough to shock them. One must know that in the Pan-Gu chaotic world, primordial chaos was a top-notch existence. Looking at one spot, one could tell the whole picture. Those below primordial chaos were inferior to dogs, but those above primordial chaos were everywhere. This was really true. Moreover, this was only the Shan chaotic world. It was only ranked in the top 1,000 in the various worlds. What about the top 500, top 300, and top 100? What kind of scene would it be? For a moment, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei could not help but be fascinated. Chapter 1281. In fact, this was because Fang Qingshan and the others did not understand the actual situation. Yes, although the merchant chaotic world was only ranked 999, that was only because they did not have top-notch combat power and were divine emperors. However, the merchant chaotic world was really not lacking in low-level forces, whether it was primordial chaos, immortal realm, or divine emperors. After all, as long as they put in a lot of effort and were willing to use resources, money could be used. As for money, there was no shortage of it for businessmen. Of course, using money could only bring about quantity, not quality. After all, quantity could be piled up with money, but quality could not. This was the same principle as handicrafts and assembly line production. However, even if it was quantity, it was still primordial chaos. Okay? Once there was a certain amount, quantitative change could also lead to qualitative change. Therefore, one could see guards that were completely composed of primordial chaos that were not weaker than those in other high-level chaotic worlds. In addition to the noise and the patrols, there was another feeling that left the deepest impression on Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei, which was that it was very oppressive. Fang Qingshan only felt that all his power seemed to be suppressed into his body, and the speed of operation was several times slower than usual. It was somewhat similar to the situation when he climbed Mount Buzhou. In fact, this was also normal. As the saying went, every ruler had his own ministers. Different worlds naturally had different rules. Although they were both in the primordial chaos world, it was obvious that people had different fates, just like Fang Qingshan and other 7th-stage primordial chaos experts. It was the same for the world. The Pangu chaotic world obviously could not be compared with the merchant chaotic world. Therefore, they were suppressed. However, apart from them, Jin Fuguei and the others, as well as Jiang Mingwei and the others, did not feel anything at all. This was because Jin Fuguei and the others were already used to it, and Jiang Mingwei and the others came from a higher-level world, so they naturally would not be suppressed. In fact, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei just needed to get used to it for a while. Fortunately, although they were suppressed, the two of them were not ordinary people, so they adapted a little after adjusting a little. If they were below primordial chaos, the situation would be completely different. Actually, the world was a place where people were judged. The degree of suppression was closely related to the individual. The higher one's cultivation level was, the lower the suppression would be. Putting this aside, when Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei followed Jiang Mingwei and Uncle Wang off the spacecraft and were looking around, Jin Fuguei ran over, sweating profusely. Although the caravan had safely arrived at the dock, it did not mean that he could sit back and relax. He still had to unload the goods, arrange the transship, and sell them. He even had to deal with the internal and external competitors. However, even so, he knew his priorities. He knew who he was today because of, so he immediately ran to Jiang Mingwei and the others. You must be very busy now. You don't have to care about us. It's good that you have the intention. Just arrange someone else. Jiang Mingwei waved her hand. She was not inconsiderate. Besides, a guide could indeed be arranged by any local. Jin Fuguei did not force her and agreed with a smile. It was good that they were willing to do their best. It would be annoying if they were pestering. He arranged for a personal attendant, Jin. Then, he turned around and went to work. The Jin family was considered a medium-sized family that was trying to become a large family. The family was located in the east, so the Void spacecraft naturally docked at the dock near the Dongfang family. If one wanted to buy something and participate in the auction, they would first go to the Dongfang family's Baichuan auction house. It was different from the people in the Desolation world who liked to live in the blessed Enclave and Spirit Mountain. Perhaps it was because of the commercial trade in the entire merchant chaotic world. The people here basically lived in the cities. Cities were not as good as the Blessed Enclave. They were all the same, just in different forms. The key was still the spirit meridians. As long as there was enough spirit energy, cultivating anywhere was the same. As for the special effects of the blessed enclave, weren't there also unique treasures in the cities? Back in the eternal world, wasn't there also a city in the chaotic world of commerce? There were countless cities of various sizes in the chaotic world of commerce. Among them, the strongest and largest were the 5 main cities of the 5 great families. Under Jin Jin's lead, Fang Qingshan and the others came to the nearest main city. It was the Eastern Suppression City, which was completely built and controlled by the Dongfang family. The entire city was blue in color, with the color of the sea and sky as the main color. The bricks used to build the city were made from a type of deep-sea, mud spiritual soil, which was extremely hard. It could be said that every brick here was at least a acquired numinous treasure. Some of the core parts were even comparable to acquired treasures. After all, how big was the entire city? The number of bricks required was more than billions. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they were a torrent of numinous treasures. Moreover, it was just a single brick, not to mention combining them together. However, be it on the city walls, in the foundation, or elsewhere, if one had a heavenly eye, spirit eye, or after receiving a major attack, they would be able to see the densely packed runes engraved on them. They were like grains of sand in the Ganges River, flashing with terrifying Taoist rhymes and spiritual light. One look was enough to make one's heart tremble and palpitate. The entire city was perfectly fused together, as if it was formed by nature. It was a peerless supreme treasure. Even the Purple Cloud Palace and Pangu Palace could not compare with it, let alone the Demon Master Palace or the Soaring Heaven Palace. This was a true level 3 treasure, comparable to a chaos treasure. It was so extravagant that it had no friends. However, unlike the numinous treasures like the Soaring Heaven Palace, those treasures looked small on the outside, but there was another world inside. However, the Eastern Suppression City was very large both inside and out. At a glance, it felt like the huge city had no end, and one's line of sight was obstructed. Looking down, it occupied about 1/10 of the entire territory in the east. Row upon row of buildings towered into the clouds, like mountains rising and falling one after another. Some of the buildings in the city were built with bricks, while some were built with rare treasures. However, no matter what, they were perfectly fused with the city, giving people a sense of beauty and impact. It was solemn and dignified, yet there was no lack of magnificence. Rather than saying the entire city was a city, it would be better to call a fortress. If one wanted to enter the city, the only way was through the city gate. Once the gate was closed, even a fly would not be able to fly out unless the protective formation was broken. Chapter 1282. What a great suppression East City. It is indeed impressive. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei looked at the city in front of them with a solemn expression. Even though this city was only a rank 3 supreme treasure, which was comparable to the heaven-splitting axe, creation green lotus, good fortune jade plate, and great Tao arena, the truth was far from that. Because once this treasure unleashes its true power, not to mention them, even undying existences, deity kings, or even peak deity kings would be like turtles in a jar if they were trapped inside. Because this was not just a rank 3 supreme treasure. Furthermore, this supreme treasure was connected to the entire eastern land veins. Fighting against it was equivalent to fighting against 1/5 of the entire Shang primal world. Since there's suppression East City, does that mean there's also suppression West, suppression South, suppression North, and suppression Central? Fang Qingshan casually asked. That's right. Gold and Silver nodded when he heard that. With a kind of innate pride, he was proud of it. It said that these 5 cities were built 300,000 years ago. Each of the 5 cities is an independent entity, but they are also connected to each other. Each of them is a 3rd-grade supreme treasure that can trap a peak divine emperor. Once they are united, they can form a 4th-grade supreme treasure and a peerless formation. Not to mention a divine emperor. Even a divine emperor can be defeated. Even though Jiang Mingyue had never been here before, she knew about this period of history. She stood beside Fang Qingshan and slowly explained. In the past, for the sake of building these 5 cities, Shang clan, Dongfang clan, Shimin clan, Nangong clan, and Beitang clan had spent more than half of their wealth. Fortunately, with effort came rewards. Relying on these 5 cities, the 5 clans not only divided the world into 5 parts, they even had the means to resist against god emperors. Even though they could only resist against early-stage god emperors, it was still a rare achievement, because the combat power of god emperors was far beyond that of god emperors. The gap between them was even greater than the gap between god emperors and primordial immortals, and the probability of becoming a god emperor was less than 1 in 1,000 peak god emperors. I see. Fang Qingshan nodded inwardly. Let's go. Let's go to the 100 Rivers auction house. There should be something we need there. Even if there isn't, it should be able to help you open your eyelids. After strolling around the city for a while, Jiang Mingyue and the others lost interest. Although this place was bustling and had many good things, none of them were ignorant and inexperienced. Moreover, it might be a good thing for most people, but for them it was nothing. It wasn't that there weren't any high-grade ones, but they weren't of much use to them. The most important thing was money. After all, they still had to go to the auction house to buy things. If they spent too much money in these trading firms, it would be a little embarrassing if they didn't have enough money later. By the way, Miss Jiang, young Master Fong, seniors, my master has said that if you see anything you like, you could go ahead and pick it. He will pay for it. Treat it as a greeting gift and compensation for your hard work. Jean Yining laughed. I don't need it, but Fong Daoist and Yang Mei Daoist can accept it. Jiang Mingyue waved her hand. The reason why she agreed to help Jin Fuguwei was because she wanted to repay him for his hard work. If she accepted the gift now, the karma between them wouldn't be resolved. Although this karma was pitifully small, wouldn't it be better to resolve it if it could be resolved? All right, then if there's anything you like, we'll pick one. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei looked at each other and didn't refuse. Firstly, it was a gesture of goodwill. If they didn't accept it, it would be a slap in the face. Secondly, they deserved it. After all, they weren't related to Jin Fuguwei in any way, and they hadn't received any small favors from him. Helping them repel the lifeless demon palace was still worth it. Moreover, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. However, they didn't push their luck and only agreed to accept one item. This way, they wouldn't be rude, and they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. When Jean Yining heard this, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. After all, the items that could be auctioned off at the 100 Rivers auction house were extremely rare. If they wanted to bid for them in such an auction house, they would definitely have to pay a considerable price. Moreover, they might not be able to succeed. This was because most people who came to the merchant mainland to look for treasures were from extraordinary families. If Fang Qingshan and the rest were greedy, they probably wouldn't be able to get that much money even if they sold Jin Fuguwei. When Jiang Mingyue and Uncle Wang heard this, they looked at Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei with admiration. A gentleman loved money, and he earned it in a proper way. Just from this point alone, Fang Qingshan and Jean Yining met the requirements of the Dao sect. However, what they didn't know was that no matter how Yang Mei didn't say it, Fang Qingshan definitely didn't have such a heart. This was the 1 meter higher sky. If there was a mistake, one shouldn't let it go. The reason why he didn't show his greed was because although Jin Fuguwei's name sounded rich, it was just for the looks. Putting aside the fact that Jiang Mingyue was still watching from the side and hadn't joined the sect yet, he couldn't let his fellow sect members look down on him. Jin Fuguwei alone couldn't buy many things. Most importantly, even if he really wanted to sweep up the goods, he had to see if the other party was willing. Although it was a verbal promise, if he went too far, the other party wasn't a fool. Why would Fang Qingshan do such a thing that was destined to fail? Junior brother, if you like something good and don't have enough money, you can tell me. I'll lend you some first. Jiang Mingyue said to Fang Qingshan in a good mood. The recommended disciple was not only a genius, but also a righteous person who was in line with the core ideology of the sect. Jiang Mingyue felt happy and honored. Thank you, senior sister. Fang Qingshan was about to say that he had money, but he was interrupted by Jiang Mingyue. Call me senior brother. Fang Qingshan couldn't help but roll his eyes. However, he still followed her advice. Yes, senior brother. Jiang Mingyue's eyes narrowed like a fox when she heard this. She had a promising look. After walking for a while, they passed through the streets and alleys. In the distance, they saw a huge building. It was like a giant, but also like a mountain. It was indomitable, its roots connected to the Kunlun Mountains and the top of Hanzhong. In the entire Jindong city, this was the tallest building. It was bigger and taller than the Dongfang family's residence, the only Mi Garden. This was the 100 Rivers Auction House under the jurisdiction of the Dongfang family. It was named after the 100 Rivers Auction House. What a good 100 Rivers Auction House. I didn't expect it to also have a third-grade treasure. Fang Qingshan looked at the behemoth-like building in front of him in amazement, and he sighed in his heart. A first-grade treasure was comparable to a Xiantian treasure. A second-grade treasure was comparable to a chaos spiritual treasure. A third-grade treasure was comparable to a chaos spiritual treasure. Under normal circumstances, the highest treasure that could be produced in an ordinary chaos world was a third-grade treasure. For example, the Pangu Chaos World. When Fang Qingshan was in desolation, he had only seen second-grade and third-grade treasures. One was the Great Path Arena, and the other was the Great Path I manifested from the Chaos World's origin will. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.